CEO's world shatters when two little girls call him Dad at an airport lounge, uncovering a hidden past and a love he never expected to face again. Before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. A roar of jet engines reverberated through the private airport lounge as Gregory Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Innovations, paced back and forth with a restless energy that seemed to charge the very air around him. At 45, Gregory had carved out a life that revolved around power, meticulous strategy, and a carefully cultivated image. He was accustomed to last-minute changes and crisis calls that might send others reeling, yet this flight delay felt different. A gnawing sense of unease tugged at him, as if something beyond business or weather complications awaited on the horizon. He was supposed to be on a flight back to New York, fresh off negotiations in London, but a sudden mechanical issue grounded his jet. And so he waited, resolute jaw clenched, gaze flickering over his phone every few minutes. In the lounge's reflective glass panels, Gregory caught sight of his own silhouette. Tall, dark hair combed with quiet precision, navy suit pressed to perfection. He was a man of success, or so the world said. Yet beneath his crisp attire and guarded expression lay the echo of an old wound he rarely acknowledged. Not even time, nor triumph, had fully healed it. At this moment he pushed aside that thought and studied the lounge's sparse late-night crowd. Luxury travelers curled up with tablets or clinked glasses of champagne. Staff hurriedly offered fresh towels and pastries. Everything seemed lavish and orderly, exactly how Gregory preferred it. But then, with the faintest rustle of footsteps, something unusual happened that shattered his carefully maintained calm. Two small girls, identical as a reflection in the mirror, wandered into the lounge, gazing around with wide eyes. They appeared no older than 4 or 5. Dressed in matching pink sweaters and little sneakers, the pair clutched identical teddy bears as if the toys formed a protective shield between them and the busy terminal. They were dwarfed by the plush armchairs and high marble counters, yet something about them was immediately captivating. Gregory normally prided himself on his ability to compartmentalize distractions, but when these two children stopped right in front of him, those bright, curious eyes fixed upon his face, he felt a startling flutter in his chest. The older of the twins, if indeed there was an older by a matter of minutes, tilted her head and regarded him with unabashed intensity. "Excuse me," she said, voice soft. "Are you... Daddy?" Those 4 words hit Gregory like a bolt of lightning. He was never at a loss for words. In negotiations, he wielded language as deftly as a swordsman wields steel. But here, confronted by these two little strangers calling him Daddy, he couldn't summon a single coherent thought. His heart pounded. It must be some misunderstanding, he reasoned. Perhaps the girls had lost their father. He tried to adopt a gentle tone, stooping slightly so as not to tower over them. "I'm not sure who you're looking for," he began carefully. "Maybe we can find your parents together. Where is your mommy or daddy?" Before they could respond, a flurry of quick footsteps echoed down the corridor. A woman rushed in, hair slightly disheveled, face flushed with concern, and Gregory felt a jolt strong enough to make his hand tremble around the phone he still clutched. He recognized her instantly, though it had been 5 years since he'd last seen that face. Her name was Claire Donovan, and once upon a time she had been everything to him, his college sweetheart, the person who turned his world luminous. She was the woman he believed had disappeared forever, vanishing from his life right as he stood poised on the threshold of corporate success. Their parting had been messy. No final goodbye, no phone call. Just a blank space that left him with unresolved questions and a slow, burning ache. As she hurried towards the twins, clutching each of the girls' shoulders protectively, Gregory felt air punch out of his lungs. Claire was older. Exhaustion etched faintly around her brown eyes, but she was still the same person whose laughter he had once pictured accompanying every morning. The old heartbreak flared up so sharply that for a moment He forgot how to breathe. "Rose! Lily!" Claire scolded gently, kneeling before the children. "You can't just go running off like that. You scared me." Her voice was as soft as a lullaby in the hush of the lounge. One of the twins, Rose, if he'd caught the name correctly, pointed at Gregory. "But Mommy, that's him," she insisted. "He looks like the picture." Lily nodded in agreement, the two sets of big eyes bouncing between their mother and Gregory. "Daddy," she repeated, with a childish certainty that clashed with the shock swirling around them. Claire's gaze finally lifted. When her eyes landed on Gregory's, both froze as though time stood still. Emotions warred in her expression: surprise, regret, perhaps a flash of old affections that flickered and then vanished beneath fresh anxiety. She clung to her daughters, her eyes flicking from side to side, as if searching for a quick exit. The tension was electric, an invisible current snapping through the air. "It's been a while," Gregory managed, voice gravelly with pent-up feelings. Outside, the lights from the runway illuminated the lounge in steady pulses, the glow reflecting off the glimmer of tears welling up in Claire's eyes. She did not respond, at least not with words. Instead, she swallowed, like the gesture might contain all the pain and confusion that threatened to spill out. Gregory's mind raced. He tried to piece together how the Claire he knew could have twin girls who looked to be about 4 years old. The timeline stabbed him with a possibility he could barely process. He recalled the final argument they had, half a decade ago, sharp words spoken out of frustration, misunderstandings neither had the courage to mend. Could she have been pregnant? If so, why had she never told him? Why vanish into thin air? At the same time, Claire's thoughts seemed no less turbulent. The last person she expected to see in this remote airport lounge was the man whose name she had avoided uttering for so long. And here he was, her children's father, looking so sure of himself in that suit, yet so utterly vulnerable in the face of two miniature reflections of him. She could see the confusion in his features, could practically hear the questions unraveling in his mind. But what could she say? That she'd run away to protect him from the complicated chaos that had nearly consumed her? That her whole life had been a labyrinth of secrets and heartbreak since? The hush in the lounge deepened. The staff behind the beverage counter paused in their tasks, uncertain whether to intervene. Passengers shot curious glances, silently speculating on what drama had collided these four people so dramatically. Even the overhead announcements seemed to fade into the background. In that moment, there was only Gregory, Claire, and the two children, connected by a hidden truth bursting into the open under the glare of overhead lights. Slowly, Gregory crouched down so he was level with the twins' curious stares. For a moment he couldn't speak. His heart thundered, and the ache of lost time pressed against his chest. "Hi," he said at last. "So, you're Rose and Lily?" Each girl nodded, small hands clutching their stuffed animals. They looked so fragile yet so fearless. Something inside Gregory unfurled and then crashed, wave upon wave of realization. If they were truly his daughters, then he had lost years of their lives. Every first word, first step, first laugh, moments he had imagined sharing with some future child had passed by. A pang of grief twisted into outrage. How could Claire keep them secret? He tore his gaze from the girls and locked onto Claire's face. "We need to talk," he said, voice taut. Despite the swirl of heartbreak, he kept his tone measured, conscious that two little sets of ears were listening. Claire nodded, swallowing again like she might crumble under too many words. She caressed the twins' hair and led them to a cozy armchair in the corner. A moment later, she hesitated, then asked them softly to stay put while she and Gregory spoke a few steps away. The children agreed, with Lily hugging Rose's arm as though they drew strength from each other. At a discreet distance, Gregory and Claire faced each other. His eyes flickered with confusion and anger, while hers brimmed with sorrow and a fearful kind of resolve. "Before you say anything," she began in a whisper, her voice trembling. "I never meant for you to find out like this. The original plan was—" She trailed off, biting her lip. "What original plan?" Gregory demanded, tension coiled in his every muscle. "Claire, do you realize I've spent 5 years thinking you just left me? No explanation, no call. And now—" The pain in his tone made Claire's eyes well with tears. She clenched her fists, an internal battle raging behind her trembling lashes. "I had reasons," she said quietly. "Reasons that felt valid at the time. My life was complicated. I didn't want you tangled in something dangerous." He glared at her, every emotion sharpened to a painful edge. "Dangerous? I would have done anything for you. God, we were in love. You think I wouldn't have fought tooth and nail to stand by you? Instead, you disappeared." The truth tumbled dangerously in Claire's mind, half-formed confessions swirling around a simpler, more pressing explanation. The father of her children needed to know them, needed to recognize the bond they deserved to share. "I found out I was pregnant just after that final argument," she said, voice barely above a hush. "The day I was going to tell you, I received a threat from someone I owed money to. Something from my past I never fully explained. I was terrified. I believed that if I stayed close to you, I'd drag you under. So I ran. I thought if I vanish, you'll be safe." "Safe?" Gregory's voice dropped to a dark hush. "You think I'm safe from the guilt of not knowing my own children exist? From the agony of losing you without understanding why? Claire—" He paused, forcing composure. "I could have helped. If there was danger, I had resources, money, influence. You know that." She pressed trembling fingers to her lips. Guilt gnawed at her, but still that battered, instinctual fear kept rearing its head. "I was young. I felt I had no choice. Maybe I was wrong, but I thought I was protecting us. And then it became too big, too late to fix." Gregory turned away for a moment, scanning the lounge, trying to gather himself. Rose and Lily huddled in that armchair, trusting and inquisitive. Something in the set of their shoulders reminded him of Claire's posture from their college days, slight but unyielding. He swallowed. "So they call me Daddy? You told them about me?" Claire exhaled shakily. "They've seen your picture. I told them that once it was safe, we'd find a way to meet you. But I never expected it to be tonight," she admitted, her gaze flicking to where the twins waited. "They recognized you from across the lounge and ran right up before I could stop them. I'm sorry for the shock." An announcement boomed overhead, signaling a further delay to the flights due to weather. The digital board flickered, pushing out departure times by another 2 hours. Gregory saw the irony. Fate was forcing them to remain in each other's orbit. He drew in a long breath. "We have to talk properly, in private. But first, those children deserve to be somewhere safe and comfortable." He fished out a business card from his wallet, scribbling a phone number on the back. "I'll book a suite at the airport hotel. Let's sort out the details. You, me, and them." Claire hesitated, wariness mingling with a sudden glimmer of relief. A swirl of memories, from study sessions in the old library to stolen kisses under campus lanterns, rose in her mind. She nodded. "All right," she managed, "but I need you to know, after everything, I never stopped caring for you. Gregory raised a hand gently, though the gesture trembled. "Let's just get them settled first." The chasm between them yawned wide, filled with regrets, unspoken truths, and the memory of what once was. But overshadowing it all were two bright little souls who had unknowingly bridged time itself to bring them back together. Rose and Lily looked up with excitement when Claire mentioned a hotel. Maybe it meant a big bed to jump on, or tiny cereal boxes at breakfast. Gregory couldn't help the faint smile that twisted his lips. Their innocence was almost painful to witness, reminding him that every moment away from them could never be returned. Tonight, he vowed to himself, he would unravel the secrets that had stolen 5 years of fatherhood from him. Whether he could ever forgive Claire was a knot he couldn't yet untangle, but for the sake of the girls, he'd have to try. And so they gathered their bags, hearts pounding with anticipation and dread, leaving the silent lounge behind. Little did Gregory know, this was only the beginning. The storm brewing outside was nothing compared to the emotional storm that threatened to break as soon as the door to that hotel suite clicked shut. In that swirl of parted lovers' tension, twin daughters, and an unbreakable bond that refused to die, everything Gregory once thought he knew about his own life would be tested and possibly transformed forever. A roll of thunder rumbled in the distance as Gregory guided Claire, Rose, and Lily through the corridor leading to the airport hotel. The rain outside had begun to fall heavily, drumming against the glass walls with a relentless fervor. It mirrored the emotional storm that churned within him, anger, disbelief, hope, and longing, all tangled beneath the veneer of his composed expression. Claire walked just a step behind him, reluctant to invade his personal space, yet unable to let her daughters trail too far. She had quietly slipped the girl's small hands into hers, as if their presence might steady her. The fluorescent lights of the hallway made every emotion on her face more visible. Worry creased her forehead, regret shadowed her eyes. Even the children felt the tension, glancing between the two adults with puzzled curiosity. Gregory's phone rang intermittently, missed calls from his assistant, frantic texts about rescheduled meetings. But he ignored them, switching the device to silent. Usually he relished controlling every detail of his itinerary, orchestrating transactions and forging alliances across continents. Now, a single question eclipsed all business concerns. How had Claire managed to hide these twins for 5 years? And more importantly, why? When they reached the hotel lobby, a polite but weary clerk offered them a key card for a suite on the 7th floor. Without speaking, Gregory pressed the button for the elevator, his jaw set. He could feel the weight of Claire's gaze flicker over him, as if assessing how much of her story he would be willing to hear. He refused to look at her just yet. He needed facts before he dared let himself feel anything more. Once in the suite, the children gasped, momentarily distracted by the space. A plush carpet, modern armchairs, and wide windows overlooking the runway lights. Rose and Lily scampered to the glass to see planes rolling across the tarmac, their voices rising in excitement. The naive wonder on their faces made Gregory's chest tighten. 5 years of missed laughter, tiny discoveries, birthday candles, lost to him. Claire cleared her throat softly. Maybe the girls should rest, it's late. Her voice was gentle, uncertain. She seemed to stand on the threshold of forgiveness, but fear held her back. Gregory eyed the children, noticing the subtle droop in their posture. It was well past any normal bedtime for kids their age, and the day's events must have exhausted them. "Yes," he said quietly. "Let them sleep. Then you and I will talk." He pointed Claire toward one of the bedrooms. Following her lead, the twins bounced on the bed, full of that boundless energy children seem to possess until it abruptly fizzles out. Claire retrieved small pajamas from a carry-on, helping the girls change while Gregory lingered by the doorway, hands in his pockets. He couldn't quite push himself to turn away. Seeing Rose and Lily up close, twisting to get an arm through a sleeve, giggling when the others stumbled, filled him with a strange, fierce yearning. He realized that he wanted to memorize every contour of their faces, to note every difference between them. They were identical in many respects, the same dark lashes, the same shape of cheekbones. But Lily had a tiny birthmark on her wrist. Rose wore a pink hair tie while Lily's was blue. And each girl's grin, though equally bright, was tinged with its own unique spark of personality. "Mommy," Lily said in a sleepy murmur, "will Daddy be here in the morning?" The question was asked so innocently that Gregory's heart lurched. He caught Claire's eyes across the bed. She flinched, quickly tucking the blanket around Lily's shoulders before answering. "Yes, sweetie. Claire said in a voice trembling with vulnerability. "He'll be here." Gregory gave a small nod, though inside he felt equal parts gratitude and sorrow. He wanted to reach out, to assure Lily that he would never leave again, yet he knew promises demanded honesty and clarity, two things they lacked right now. Finally, the girls were settled under the soft glow of a bedside lamp. They drifted off faster than Gregory had anticipated, worn out by the day's excitement. Claire stood, exhaling slowly, and gestured for Gregory to follow her back into the suite's living area. A few feet away from the children, she turned, arms crossed protectively over her sweater. "Thank you for being so calm," she began. "I'm sure this isn't easy to process." Gregory's expression hardened. "We can skip polite trivialities, Claire. You kept them from me. Let's start with why, and let's be thorough." She dropped her gaze to the carpet. In that moment, she looked more fragile than he had ever seen her, shoulders slightly hunched, lips quivering. 5 years ago," she said, voice hushed, "I thought I was making the only choice that would keep everyone safe. I was in trouble, debt, bad people. It was going to spill into your life, our life, and you were about to launch your company, so I convinced myself leaving was best." He studied her, arms folded across his chest. She continued, her words tumbling out faster, as if each one were a shard of glass. "Back then, I'd borrowed money from this man. I'm not proud of it. My mom was sick. The medical bills were overwhelming. I was in school, working 2 part-time jobs, and it still wasn't enough. I took a loan, naive about the terms. After your final argument with me in that last year of college, we were already on rocky ground. Then I found out I was pregnant. When the loan shark realized you were wealthy, on the brink of success, he threatened me. He told me that if I didn't pay, he'd come after you too, ruin your career, your reputation. So I ran. I thought I would fix it alone, spare you from the chaos." Gregory's eyes narrowed. "You could have told me." She barked a self-accusing laugh. "I was terrified. The man's name was linked to violent incidents. I worried that if I involved you, you'd become a target. You had your entire future in front of you, your business about to take flight. I was just some—" She fought to keep her composure. "Some small-town girl drowning in problems. I had no clue how to get out without endangering you." His posture softened for a fraction of a second. "So you vanished." "Yes," Claire whispered. "I spent months basically on the run. Changed addresses, used an alias for hospital checkups when the time came to give birth. When Rose and Lily were born, I was happy, but alone. I set aside any longing to reunite with you, thinking it was best. Then the threat simmered down. Eventually. By then I convinced myself you'd moved on, and I'd hidden the truth so long that it felt impossible to walk back into your life." Gregory stared at the closed bedroom door behind which his daughters slept. "Impossible," he echoed, "but not unthinkable. You had a moral obligation. You knew I'd want to be part of their lives." "I did," Claire said, tears edging her voice. "And I know I made the worst kind of choice. I can't change that, Gregory. But I never thought we'd meet here and now. The girls recognized you from pictures on my phone. I never expected they'd see you in person tonight." He inhaled, as if bracing himself against a tempest of emotion. "You left me in the dark about my own children. Do you grasp the enormity of that betrayal?" "Yes," she whispered. "Every day. I grapple with it every day. I can only ask, for their sake, that you allow me to explain fully and figure out a path forward. If I'd known how to handle all this better, I would have." For a moment, Gregory's eyes burned with anger. He took a step toward the window, staring at the swirling rain. Out on the tarmac, a plane's headlights cut through the darkness, ascending into the stormy clouds. "Let me guess," he said quietly, turning back to her. "Now that you've shown up by accident, you'll vanish again once the threat reappears." "No," Claire replied vehemently. "That threat is gone. I paid off the debt eventually. worked double shifts, took help from a local church, from friends. The man's in prison now, charged with other crimes. Please believe me, the only thing that kept me away was my own fear and guilt. Silence stretched between them. 1,000 times Gregory had fantasized about reuniting with Claire, about having her step back into his life with an apology or some heartfelt explanation. Yet the reality was far more complicated and more painful than any scenario he had pictured. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. "Listen," he said, voice calmer. "I have every right to be furious. But there are 2 little girls in that room who don't deserve any more secrecy or distance. So I'm not going anywhere. Neither are you." Claire's eyes widened, relief mingling with trepidation. "We're going to figure this out," he continued. "But I need time. I need to process everything, and so will they." A soft sniffle escaped Claire. She nodded, wiping a stray tear from the corner of her eye. "Thank you, Gregory, for caring about them and for not shutting me out right away." His mouth twitched in a half-smile that was more sorrow than warmth. "We'll talk more in the morning. For now, get some rest." He moved toward a second bedroom, rummaging in a small overnight case that a porter had delivered from his stalled jet. If the plane wasn't fixed or the weather didn't clear, they might be stuck here another day anyway. Claire paused. "What do we tell the girls when they wake up?" "We tell them," Gregory answered, "that they can call me Daddy and that we'll have breakfast together. Then we go from there." His voice wavered, but Claire's gaze was steady now, hopeful. "All right. Good night," she managed. She stepped away, crossing to where the twins slept. She glanced over her shoulder, seeing Gregory slip into his own room and quietly close the door. The latch's click sounded like a final exhale, letting both of them breathe again. Claire tiptoed to the bed where her daughters lay. Rose was curled on her side, Lily sprawled with a teddy bear half off the mattress. They looked peaceful. Could Gregory truly accept them without letting resentment corrode the relationship they might build? She tenderly smoothed back Lily's hair, wishing life had led her down a different path, one that never required flight or lies. She prayed this was the start of amends she'd spent years longing to make. Across the suite's main space, Gregory leaned against the closed door, heart pounding. Shadows from the streetlights outside cast lines across the carpet. The half-light illuminated his suitcase, the reflection of his phone on the desk, and a swirl of regrets he couldn't escape. He'd spent so much time building his empire, perfecting negotiations, forging alliances, yet no deal he'd ever struck felt as monumental as the one he now contemplated, forging a bond with 2 children who had never known their father. Behind the anger and grief, he recognized the flicker of something undeniable. Hope. He had a chance, maybe just a sliver, to reclaim a piece of the life that had slipped from his grasp. If he and Claire could trust each other again, they might form a family, or something akin to it. But could he forgive her? Could she forgive herself? All he knew was that letting Claire vanish again wasn't an option. Not now. Not with Rose and Lily sleeping in the next room. Outside, the storm's fury slowly faded, replaced by the hush of midnight. The airport's lights glowed in the distance, runways wet and glistening. In that quiet moment, with the entire suite lulled by the hush of sleep, Gregory realized that morning might bring a new horizon for all of them. The question was, would they emerge from the tangle of past mistakes stronger or crumble under the strain of truths too long suppressed? He wouldn't know until he stepped forward with eyes open and heart unguarded, trusting that no matter the pain, reuniting with his daughters was worth every uncertain step. And so, with a weary sigh, Gregory closed his eyes, readying himself for the next chapter of a life that had just been forever changed. Dawn arrived with a gentle glow filtering through the hotel room's thick curtains. The rain had passed in the night, leaving the runway outside glittering under fresh sunlight. Inside the suite, A soft hush lingered, an after-effect of the tense conversations from just hours before. Gregory stirred first, blinking away the remnants of restless sleep. He was still in his shirt and dress pants, the bed made up only enough to suggest he had tried to lie down. Truth be told, he had hardly rested. Instead, his mind had circled endlessly around the same questions. What now? What role did he even know how to play in the lives of two little girls who were already well into their childhood? He rose stiffly, running a hand over his face before stepping into the living area. The suite's large windows revealed a sky of pale blue streaked with the last ribbons of storm clouds. He cast a glance at the closed door of the other bedroom where Claire and the twins slept. As if on cue, he heard a small voice from behind it, light, childish, and questioning. Curiosity tugged him forward, but his heart hammered with an unfamiliar mixture of excitement and dread. "I'm a father," he reminded himself, the words still feeling strange in his mouth. "They're my daughters." He was about to knock when the door opened from inside and out peered two identical faces, hair tousled from sleep. Rose and Lily stood side by side, each hugging a teddy bear to her chest. At the sight of Gregory, they both froze, big eyes blinking in wonder. After a moment, Rose broke into a tentative smile. "Hi," she whispered, voice still scratchy from slumber. "Mommy said, 'You're our daddy.'" Gregory inhaled deeply, summoning a reassuring smile. "Yes, I am," he answered softly. A swirl of warmth, guilt, and longing settled in his chest, so thick it threatened to choke him. Kneeling down to their eye level, he noticed how the morning light picked up flecks of gold in their dark hair. "I'm sorry we didn't meet before," he told them quietly, unsure if they could grasp that concept. "But I'm really happy to see you now." The girls exchanged a look. Then Lily shyly extended her teddy toward him. "My bear's name is Patches," she said, almost as if offering a handshake. Gregory gently touched the toy's fluffy ear. "It's nice to meet you, Patches," he said, injecting a playful solemnity into his voice. Inside, emotion threatened to spill over, but he forced himself to stay steady. He needed them to feel safe, not overwhelmed by the swirl of adult angst. Claire appeared behind the twins, still in her pajamas, a faded gray t-shirt and soft leggings. Her hair was mussed, and faint circles shadowed her eyes, but a slight smile touched her lips as she witnessed the girls' first morning with Gregory. The tension between them lingered, an invisible line that neither dared cross. "Good morning," she said softly. He nodded. "Good morning." Then, focusing on the twins, he added, "Should we get breakfast? I believe this place has a decent buffet. Pancakes, waffles, you name it." The children perked up instantly at the mention of breakfast. Rose nodded vigorously. "Pancakes," she declared, clapping her small hands. Lily mimicked her sister's enthusiasm, chanting the word pancakes as they darted into the room, presumably to put on the clothes Claire had laid out. Claire moved closer, her voice lowered. "Thank you," she said, her eyes flicking from him to the bedroom door. "I know this is complicated, but it means so much to them." Gregory gave a brusque nod, fighting down the wave of contrasting emotions that leapt at Claire's gentle tone. "They deserve it," he replied, "and so do you." A beat of silence passed before Claire turned to help the girls get ready, leaving Gregory alone with his thoughts. He released a pent-up breath. Yesterday's fury felt distant, yet hardly gone. Today he resolved to keep his temper in check. The children needed stability if they were going to accept him into their lives. That didn't erase the betrayal, but it underscored a simpler fact. His daughters needed him now. When they emerged a short while later, the twins wore matching floral tops, each with a small pink hairband. They clung to Claire's hands as they ventured out of the suite. Gregory fell into step beside them, noticing each child's distinct walk. Lily bounced on her toes while Rose moved in a careful trot. Claire lingered just half a step behind, as though she were uncertain whether to stride alongside Gregory or give him space. In the elevator, the girls pointed at the flashing floor numbers with glee, exclaiming each time the display changed. Claire shared a brief, helpless grin with Gregory, some fleeting moment of recognition that yes, these little wonders were their children, discovering the simplest joys. The lobby greeted them with the mellow hum of travelers bustling about. A hostess led them to a breakfast area that overlooked the runway, where planes taxied under the morning sun. It was busy but not chaotic. Most people were absorbed with newspapers or checking departure boards on their phones. Gregory noticed a few curious glances, likely attracted by the twins' bright chatter, but no one paid them undue attention. He was accustomed to commanding entire rooms in business settings. It felt surreal to blend into the crowd as just another parent with kids in tow. At the buffet, the children's eyes grew wide at the array of pastries, fruits, and cereals. They zoomed in on the pancake station, excitedly pointing to the various toppings. Gregory helped them ladle strawberry compote onto their plates, bemused and a bit anxious about the sugar high that might follow. Claire hovered behind him with plates for the girls, occasionally giving soft instructions like, "Just a little chocolate sauce," or "Let's add some fruit, okay?" When they finally settled at a table, the twins dug in with zeal. The comedic mess of syrup and sticky hands was enough to make Gregory crack a faint smile. He offered to help Lily cut her pancake, but she insisted on doing it herself, clumsily sawing away with a child-safe fork and knife. Rose watched, then demanded the same independence. Claire and Gregory exchanged looks, moments of sympathy laced with pride at the small ways children assert themselves. As the girls devoured their breakfast, Claire sipped coffee, gathering her courage. At last, she dared to address the swirling tension. "Gregory, about last night, I'd like to finish the conversation we started." Her voice stayed quiet, mindful of the children, but her eyes held earnest resolve. He set down his own coffee cup. "I'm listening," he said, keeping his tone even. Claire breathed in. "I know I explained some of it, but if you have questions about how we lived or anything, please ask. I want you to hear it from me before you imagine something worse." He glanced sideways at Rose and Lily, ensuring they were preoccupied with their food. "Not here," he answered softly. "Later, if we can find some privacy." Claire nodded, clearly relieved that he was open to more discussion rather than shutting her out. Meanwhile, Lily piped up, sticky with syrup. "Daddy, do you live in a big house?" Her question was so innocent and direct it caught him off guard. Gregory's brow lifted. Well, I have a nice home in New York," he responded carefully. "It's not enormous, but it's comfortable. Has a view of Central Park." Rose leaned forward, wide-eyed. "What's Central Park?" "A really big park in the middle of the city," Gregory said. He tried to phrase it like a story, conscious of how new and distant his world must sound to them. "There's a zoo there, and lakes, and even a carousel." Lily's gasp was pure delight. "A zoo with real animals? Could we see them?" A pang of bittersweet longing hit Gregory. "Absolutely," he murmured, only then realizing he had no idea how or when such a visit might happen. They lived. Where exactly? He turned to Claire, half expecting a cautious shake of the head. Instead, she offered a small smile. "Maybe one day soon," she told the girls. "We'll see what our schedules look like." Her response both comforted and unsettled Gregory. It implied that she was open to bridging their lives, yet it also reminded him that they had a tangled web of circumstances to navigate. For the children's sake, though, he played along. "Yes," he agreed, "one day soon." They lingered over breakfast, the girls' laughter briefly lifting the gravity that swirled between Gregory and Claire. Yet beneath the small joys and wide-eyed excitement, the adults felt the undercurrent of heavy truths still waiting to be aired. The ephemeral moment of harmony only underscored what they had lost by not sharing these milestones from the start. After clearing their plates, the family, Gregory nearly tripped over that word in his mind. Returned to the suite. The twins burst inside, eager to play with their stuffed animals. Gregory was grateful for a moment alone with Claire, whose gaze rested on him with an unspoken plea. He broke the silence. "You mentioned the threat was gone, that you paid your debts. Where have you been living?" Her arms folded protectively. "A small coastal town," she replied. "I've been working as a freelance writer. It's not glamorous, but it kept a roof over our heads." She paused, shame flickering across her features. "I changed my phone number multiple times out of fear. Eventually, I got used to not reaching out." Gregory exhaled, leaning against the suite's wall. "And the girls? Do they go to school?" Claire nodded. "A local preschool. They're set to start kindergarten next fall." She frowned, a line creasing her brow. "I guess that's something else we need to discuss. Where they'll go, how often you see them." He lifted a hand, gently interrupting. "One step at a time. I won't pretend it's easy for me to hear you had these conversations with yourself all these years, deciding all these details without me. But the children are what matter." She swallowed. "I know, and for what it's worth, I've always told them about you in small ways. Showed them your pictures from college. Said you were busy with work, but one day—" Her voice caught, tears threatening again. "I never wanted them to resent you. Maybe it was a poor attempt at bridging a gap I'd created." Gregory's heart clenched, torn between anger and empathy. Finally he nodded, albeit stiffly. "Thank you for that at least." A moment later, Rose and Lily dashed up, full of energy. Rose tugged at Gregory's sleeve. "Can we watch a cartoon?" she asked. "Mommy says not for too long, but maybe a little bit." "Sure," he replied, voice gentle despite the swirl inside his mind. "Let's see what's on." He turned on the TV, navigating to a kid-friendly channel, stepping aside to let them settle onto the couch. Claire stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself as though bracing against a chill only she could feel. Outside, the sun burned off the remaining clouds, brightening the runway and reflecting on the metal shells of parked planes. Gregory knew their flight might be cleared soon, perhaps today. That meant decisions needed to be made quickly. Would he leave them behind? Invite them onto his private jet? The logistics rattled him. More crucial was the question of how to rebuild a relationship with these children. And with Claire. Finally, he turned away from the window, forcing a calm tone. "Let's give them a chance to enjoy cartoons for a while, and we can find a quieter spot in the lounge or somewhere private to talk. I need you to fill in every gap. I can't keep flying blind." Claire turned, meeting his gaze with a flicker of relief. "I owe you that," she murmured. So, with the twins safely absorbed in the playful antics on screen, Gregory and Claire discreetly slipped into the hallway. Each step was weighted with the knowledge that one conversation wouldn't solve 5 years of separation, but it would be a start. The hush of the corridor, punctuated by distant elevator chimes, felt oddly intimate, reminiscent of the hours they once spent studying side by side during their university days. Yet the intervening years had changed them irrevocably. They settled on a small seating nook near a large window that overlooked the terminal's thoroughfare. Claire clasped her hands together. "I'm ready," she said, voice trembling just enough that Gregory had to steel himself. "Ask me anything. I promise I won't hide." He studied her, recalling a younger Claire who used to laugh easily with wide-open trust. That Claire had vanished, replaced by a woman marked by anxiety and guilt, but also by maternal devotion. Something about that transformation softened his defenses, just a little. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything that happened after you walked away that night, when you decided not to come back. Spare no details." His heart pounded as she gathered her thoughts. They were perched on the precipice of revelations that could either mend broken threads or tear them further apart. But as the first words left Claire's lips, raw, hesitant, but honest, Gregory felt a glimmer of reassurance. They might not reclaim lost time, yet maybe they could forge a new start. For Rose, for Lily, and perhaps, in ways neither dared admit, for themselves as well. Seated in the airport hotel's quiet nook, Claire and Gregory faced each other with a sense of heavy formality, like two diplomats about to negotiate a delicate peace treaty. Outside the tall windows, travelers hurried through the terminal, dragging carry-ons and sipping from paper cups. Life marched on with routine hustle, oblivious to the emotional minefield unfolding between the former college sweethearts. For a moment, Claire said nothing, seemingly gathering courage. She glanced at Gregory's expectant expression. His posture was rigid, hands braced on his knees, jaw set in determination. Yet beneath that steeled composure, she caught flickers of vulnerability in his eyes, an echo of the young man he had once been, standing in her dorm corridor, gently offering help with a backpack full of books. That memory fueled her. She owed him honesty now, no matter how raw. "After that last night at college," she began softly, "I was terrified. We'd had that awful argument. Both of us said things we regretted. I felt like the walls were closing in. My mom's bills were ballooning, and the man I borrowed money from was pressing me. Then I took a pregnancy test. I'll never forget how my hand shook when it showed positive." She paused, inhaling a tremulous breath. "I didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted to protect you from the fallout of my mistakes." Gregory's eyes flickered in recognition of the pain behind her words, though a subtle tension drew his brows together. "So, you left." She nodded, her throat tightening. "I left. I packed up the basics, my laptop, some clothes, and got on a bus that very night. I ended up in a neighboring state renting a tiny room in a run-down building. It was all I could afford. My plan was to lie low, avoid any confrontation until I could figure out how to pay off the loan shark." Gregory listened intently, knuckles whitening where his hands gripped his knees. "Why not call me?" he asked, voice low. "I could have paid off anything you owed. I wouldn't have hesitated." A sad, almost bitter smile touched her lips. "I know you would have tried. But that was part of the problem. I was convinced that if you swooped in, you'd entangle your new investors, your future board members, and maybe even your personal safety. The man I owed was known for threatening families, using intimidation. I had no idea how far he'd go, and we'd just had a screaming match. My head was... well, I was scared and ashamed." Gregory's gaze flicked to the window, absorbing her explanation. He remembered the frustration of those arguments, both of them under pressure, prone to misreading each other's signals. Still, the revelation of a real threat, one with tangible danger, clawed at him. How many nights had she felt hunted, pregnant and alone? She continued, voice tight with emotion. "I landed a job at a small diner. Barely made enough for rent, let alone saving money for the debt. But in my second trimester, I realized stress was harming the baby. My health took a nosedive. Eventually, I found a free clinic. They directed me to a safe house for women in crisis. It wasn't glamorous, but it shielded me from the loan shark's reach." Gregory swallowed, feeling a stab of guilt. All that time, he had been forging business deals and preparing for product launches, ignorant of her struggle. "And that's where you had the twins?" Claire shook her head. "Not exactly. I stayed in the safe house for a while, but the conditions were cramped. I was worried it wasn't the best environment for a newborn. A volunteer at the clinic helped me relocate to a coastal town. She had distant relatives there, kind souls who rented me a small attic apartment at a discount. That's where Rose and Lily were born, at a local hospital. The staff didn't ask too many questions since I paid in cash. I gave a different last name, changed phone numbers again. I erased myself from everything I once knew." She paused, letting that sink in. Gregory tried to picture Claire alone in an attic, caring for two fragile infants without any help from him, or even a single phone call. It tore at him in ways he couldn't articulate. "You said you worked multiple jobs?" Yes, Claire confirmed, eyes dropping to her lap. For the first year, I babysat other children while raising my own. I did freelance writing at night, sending articles to small online platforms, anything to get by. Around the same time, I was in and out of court for my mom's estate. She passed while I was pregnant, and settling her debts was another headache. Her voice caught, tears edging her eyes. I never even got to say goodbye to her properly. Gregory leaned forward, compassion dimming his anger. Claire, I had no idea. She met his gaze, a single tear slipping free. I know you didn't, and there were so many times I picked up the phone, about to dial your number, but something always stopped me. Fear, shame, the constant voice in my head telling me you'd moved on. I mean, you were on the cusp of becoming the Gregory Caldwell CEO. I saw your name pop up in news articles about your startup going public. How could I drag you into my chaos? Gregory's shoulders slumped under the weight of regret. I wish you had called. Even if things were tense, I would have done anything to help. You and I, regardless of that argument, there was love. The last word emerged gruffly, a confession he couldn't fully bury. A fragile smile curved Claire's lips. Yes, there was. She twined her fingers together, forging on. After the twins were born, the loan shark issue intensified. He tracked me down once, threatened me unless I paid. I ended up borrowing from friends at the church to settle most of what I owed. Eventually, the authorities caught him on other serious charges. He's still in prison as far as I know. Gregory stared at her, incredulous. All this, on your own. Claire, he exhaled, brushing a hand through his hair in frustration. I don't know whether to be furious with you for shutting me out or in awe that you survived this. She let out a weak laugh that trembled with emotion. Maybe a bit of both. I got by day. Then, once I stabilized, I wanted to... Her words broke off. I wanted to find you, but after so long, I convinced myself it was too late. You were traveling the world, appearing in business magazines. Meanwhile, I was living paycheck to paycheck, juggling 2 toddlers. The chasm seemed insurmountable. Gregory nodded slowly, an ache in his chest. He remembered how empty he'd felt after she vanished, sleepless nights, burying himself in work to forget. You could have found me, he said, voice careful, even if it hurt. I should have at least known I had children. Tears welled more freely now in Claire's eyes. You're right, she whispered, voice trembling with remorse. It was selfish. I was paralyzed by fear, shame, and, I guess, pride. I didn't want you to see how broken my life had become. Silence draped over them, thick and heavy. Beyond the window, sunlight glinted off airplane wings. A trolley cart rumbled along the corridor with fresh linens for the housekeeping staff. Ordinary life marched on, while Claire and Gregory sat suspended in an emotional reckoning. At length, Gregory cleared his throat. All right, he said. We can't undo the past, but we have to decide how to move forward. How do you see this happening? Relief and anxiety warred in Claire's expression. I want them to have you in their lives, she said, voice earnest. They deserve that chance. They're so curious about the world. Your world. They light up at any story about you. And I've been quietly saving money, planning to eventually relocate to a better neighborhood. We can figure out some arrangement. You'd move? Gregory asked, brow furrowing. To New York? She offered a tentative shrug. If that's what's best. I can continue freelance work from anywhere. Or if you'd prefer, we could try a shared schedule. They love their preschool, but I don't know, I'm open to suggestions. Gregory absorbed her words, mind spinning with the complexities, schooling, housing, his own punishing travel schedule. And looming above all was the question of trust, whether he could rely on Claire not to vanish again. He studied her tired eyes, the lines of care around her mouth. She was different now, tempered by hardship, but the tenderness he remembered was still there. First step, he said carefully, is me getting to know them. Maybe we spend a few days together. If the plane's fixed today, I could arrange for you and the twins to come with me to New York, at least temporarily. We can find you a hotel or a short-term rental while we figure out something more permanent." He paused, measuring her reaction. "If you're comfortable with that." Claire's gaze flickered with uncertainty. "It's sudden," she admitted. "The twins, they've never been on a plane. But it might be good. Rose and Lily would adore seeing Central Park, that zoo you mentioned, and it'd give you real time with them." He offered a small, reassuring nod. "We'll take it slow. No big announcements or immediate decisions beyond letting them see their father's home. If at any point you feel uneasy, I'll respect that. But Claire, I need them to know me. And I need to see them grow." Emotion clogged her throat. She blinked, tears brimming once more. "Thank you," she whispered. "I was so afraid you'd hate me for what I did. But you're giving us a chance." "It's not about forgiveness or blame right now," he said, though his voice held a catch of lingering hurt. "It's about those two little souls in the suite." He stood, extending a hand toward her, an invitation for a fragile kind of partnership. Claire let him help her up. The moment felt oddly reminiscent of years ago when they'd first begun dating, Gregory gently leading her by the hand to a campus event. But now the stakes were infinitely higher, their hands unclasped as they walked back to the suite, side by side but with an invisible space between them, an acknowledgement of the heartbreak that once drove them apart and might still. Approaching the door, they heard cartoon voices and squeals of laughter. Gregory's heart squeezed at the reminder that inside were two young children waiting for him to be daddy. Claire turned to him, voice hushed so the girls wouldn't overhear. "Are we telling them about the New York idea yet?" He considered. "Let's not overwhelm them. I'll check on flight statuses. If there's a departure slot tonight or tomorrow, I'll mention the trip. Keep it exciting but calm. Meanwhile, they can enjoy the day. Maybe we can go for a short walk around the airport. Let them see planes up close." Claire agreed with a small, grateful smile. She opened the door. The twins glanced up, beaming as Gregory entered. Lily scrambled off the couch, bounding to him with an outstretched drawing. Crayon lines in bright colors showed 4 stick figures, 2 big, 2 small, standing under a sun. "This is us," Lily announced proudly, pointing. "Me and Rose and Mommy and you." Gregory blinked, chest tightening. "I love it," he said, crouching to study the artwork. "Thank you, Lily." Rose patted over, peering at the drawing. "I helped color the sun," she added, not wanting to be left out. He ruffled her hair. "It's perfect," he told them, voice thick with emotion. Claire hovered behind them, wiping discreetly at her eyes. In that simple moment, Gregory felt a swirl of gratitude and sorrow. Gratitude for the living, breathing miracle that was fatherhood, and sorrow for the years stolen by fear and misunderstanding. Sensing his intensity, the twins pivoted back to the TV, each picking up a stuffed animal to act out the cartoon's storyline. Claire joined them on the carpet, encouraging their imaginative play. Gregory stood a little apart, phone in hand, scanning for an update on his private jet's maintenance. Would they be ready to depart soon? Could he truly whisk them off to New York within hours of reconnecting? He glanced over at the small cluster of mother and daughters, noticing Claire's gentle smile as she leaned in to help Lily with a plush toy princess scene. This was the family he'd never known he had, and in ways he couldn't yet articulate, he realized they were already rewriting his life in vivid, unexpected colors. As the cartoon credits rolled, Rose and Lily sprang to their feet, clamoring about going somewhere fun. Claire looked at Gregory, brow lifted in question. Without hesitation, he pocketed his phone. "Let's go watch planes," he said, offering his hand to them. The twins squealed in delight, each grabbing one of his hands, leading him toward the door. Claire stood back for a moment, a soft laugh escaping her. "Looks like they're already calling the shots," she joked, trailing behind. Gregory gave a small grin, letting the girls tug him along. For once, he felt no urge to check business emails or track the stock market fluctuations. Rose and Lily's enthusiastic chatter was a balm, muffling the lingering ache of past regrets. They stepped into the hallway, a new sense of unity taking shape, though questions still loomed about co-parenting, about their own unresolved history. One thing was clear. They had begun the journey forward. Step by step, they would navigate the unknown, forging something resembling a family out of the wreckage of old mistakes. The uncertain promise of the future shimmered, delicate but real, like the faint rainbow that sometimes emerges after a storm has passed. The airport was bustling with the usual commotion of an early afternoon rush. Overhead announcements echoed through high ceilings, directing passengers to their gates. Wheelie suitcases rattled across polished tiles, and a cafe nearby hummed with espresso machines steaming milk for midday cappuccinos. Into this familiar clamor ventured an unusual foursome: Gregory, Claire, and the wide-eyed twin girls, Rose and Lily. The plan was simple enough: take the children around the concourse to see airplanes through floor-to-ceiling windows. Yet for Gregory, walking hand in hand with his daughters felt like stepping into an entirely different life. Each giggle they unleashed, every question about the plane's sizes or shapes, tugged on a heart he'd once believed was impervious to surprise. They stopped at a viewing platform lined with tall windows that overlooked the runways. It was relatively quiet, save for a few travelers snapping photos of planes taxiing for takeoff. Rose pressed herself against the glass, eyes alight with wonder as a large jet lumbered into position, its wings so wide they seemed to stretch beyond her imagination. "Where's it going, Daddy?" she asked, turning to look up at him. Gregory paused, unaccustomed to the jolt that word, Daddy, sent through his entire being. He cleared his throat softly. "Not sure, sweetheart. It could be flying to London or maybe Tokyo. Airplanes connect us to all sorts of places." Lily joined her sister, pressing her nose to the glass. "Do we get to ride one soon?" she asked, her voice quavering with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Claire and Gregory exchanged a glance, both recalling their earlier conversation about heading to New York together. Neither had yet broached it with the girls, unsure if it was too abrupt. But the question hung in the air, waiting for an answer. Finally, Gregory crouched to Lily's eye level. "Would you like to ride on a plane?" Lily nodded vigorously, while Rose echoed her excitement. "We could sit by the window," Rose exclaimed, as though imagining the cottony clouds within reach of her fingertips. Claire, standing beside them, folded her arms against a slight chill. She recognized that for all her daughter's enthusiasm, uprooting them would still be a giant leap. "We might ride one soon," she ventured, trying to strike a careful balance between offering hope and not overwhelming them. The twins cheered, though their celebrations were cut short by a fresh overhead announcement about delays. Gregory's phone vibrated in his pocket, prompting him to momentarily step aside to answer a call from his assistant. Claire guided the girls closer to a plaque detailing the airport's history, using it as a distraction while Gregory dealt with business. He returned a couple of minutes later, phone still in hand. His expression was carefully neutral, yet Claire could see the tension in the tight set of his jaw. "They've replaced a part on my jet," he explained quietly, "but air traffic is backed up after last night's storm. The earliest departure slot might be tonight. Late, possibly tomorrow morning." Claire's heart fluttered. That timeline meant their decision about traveling together would need to be made soon. Rose and Lily, oblivious to adult dilemmas, stood at the windows again, pointing out a smaller private plane in the distance that bore a bright, swooping logo. Gregory took a step closer to Claire, lowering his voice. "I have a suite at a hotel in Manhattan. It's quiet, plenty of room. We could stay there while you decide on something more permanent." She hesitated, eyes scanning the children. "Are you sure? That's your home, your personal space. I don't want to intrude." His mouth twitched, forming something halfway between a grimace and a wry smile. "Claire, you and the girls aren't intruding. Besides..." He glanced at his daughters, wonder glowing in their gazes as they tracked another plane lifting off into the sky. "I'm done with lost time. If you're comfortable, I want them with me, at least for a while." Emotion pooled in Claire's eyes, but she forced it down. "We'll need to gather my things, what little I brought on this trip. I guess I should handle the apartment situation too." She frowned, picturing the modest coastal flat stuffed with children's clothes and her freelance notes. "But maybe we do need a fresh start." Gregory nodded. "We can iron out details in New York, that is, if you say yes. I won't pressure you. It's just an option." A swirl of nerves mingled with a flicker of relief in Claire's chest. She'd lived so long in survival mode, always bracing for the next wave of trouble, that letting Gregory shoulder some responsibilities felt at once daunting and liberating. "All right," she murmured, voice steady. "We'll go with you." He exhaled, shoulders relaxing, and mustered a faint smile. "Thank you. I promise to handle this gently. Rose and Lily's comfort is top priority." Before Claire could reply, the twins charged over, squealing about an enormous plane they'd just seen jump into the sky. It reminded her of how quickly children adapt to novelty and delight, if only adults could follow suit. Gregory's gaze softened as he listened to the girls' excited chatter, and Claire realized how perfectly he fit into their dynamic. Despite all the heartbreak, he was a father who was already determined to be present. They wandered the concourse a bit longer, letting the twins burn off excess energy. The children spotted a small kiosk selling travel essentials and were captivated by colorful neck pillows and miniature airplane figurines. Lily picked up a toy plane with squeaky wheels. Rose gravitated to a plush version of the airport's mascot. Claire, rummaging through her purse, frowned. She hadn't planned for extra expenses, but Gregory smoothly stepped in, covering the cost before she could protest. She shot him a grateful look, though she also felt a pang of inadequacy. At last, they found themselves at a modest seating area where they could rest. Rose and Lily curled up to examine their new toys, each one spinning imaginative stories about where their plane might go. Claire sat beside them, eyes flicking up to see Gregory leaning against a nearby wall, arms folded, his expression pensive. He cleared his throat. "If we don't depart until later tonight," he said, "it might be best to let them nap or rest. We could keep the hotel suite for the day." His gaze touched Claire's. "Also, I'd like to talk privately about some logistics. We can't just appear at my apartment in Manhattan without preparing, especially if you plan to stay a while." She nodded, uneasy but resolute. "Yes, we need a plan for everything. Preschool, living arrangements, finances." A flicker of regret crossed Gregory's face. "I know it's a lot at once. You've borne so much alone. I don't want to bulldoze over your autonomy, but Claire, you and the girls deserve security. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intent on giving you that now." She pressed her lips together, overcome by the sincerity in his tone. Memories of him surfaced, that caring nature he'd always tried to mask with ambition. She realized that on some level he was still that person who'd once insisted on walking her home after late-night study sessions, just to be sure she was safe. The difference was that now the stakes were infinitely higher. "Maybe we should head back to the suite," she said, trying to sound practical. "The girls can watch a movie or nap, and you and I can, well, strategize." Gregory's nod was curt, though his eyes flicked with relief. "Yes, let's do that." Soon they retraced their steps, with Lily and Rose prancing between them. The children wore themselves out from excitement, yawning by the time they reached the hotel floor. Once inside, Claire encouraged the twins to stretch out on the couch with pillows and watch another cartoon. Lily conked out almost immediately, the new toy plane clutched to her chest. Rose watched for a few minutes, but soon drifted off herself. Claire pulled a blanket over them, heart aching with affection. How had 5 years slipped away like sand through her fingers? Now, in the span of a day, everything was changing. She turned to see Gregory observing quietly, his expression a tapestry of tenderness and regret. He gestured toward the suite's small dining table. "Shall we talk there?" She nodded, following him. Outside the windows, afternoon light cast soft beams across the runway. They sat, a few feet separating them, each bracing for another round of negotiation, but with far more emotional weight than any business deal. Claire intertwined her fingers, choosing her words. "I want to be clear, I'm not chasing your money. I never did. I only want the girls to have what they need and to know their father." She drew a shaky breath. "But if I'm uprooting them, I have to be sure we can co-parent in a way that respects their emotional well-being." Gregory's voice was gentle. "I understand. Look, it's not about me throwing money at the problem. I want to be fully involved, physically, emotionally. But yes, of course, I can help financially, if that eases the burden." A wave of relief mingled with lingering shame washed over her. "I'd appreciate that," she admitted. "My freelance work is steady, but it's not a fortune. And with the cost of living in New York?" She trailed off, remembering times she'd rummaged for change just to buy groceries. Gregory's gaze softened further. "I'll get you set up comfortably. Maybe start with a short-term rental. No strings attached. You decide if you like the area or if we need something else. Meanwhile, I can help enroll the girls in a good school or kindergarten. We'll figure out a schedule, how often they stay at my place, how often at yours. We can talk about the rest as we go." Her heart raced, half liberated by his willingness to help, half terrified by how quickly her life was pivoting. "I don't want to disrupt them more than necessary," she murmured, a mother's protective instinct coloring her tone. "They've never even visited a big city, but maybe if we show them the parks, let them see how we live day to day, they'll adjust." Gregory nodded. "And you, Claire?" he asked carefully. "Do you see yourself in New York for the long haul? I don't want you to feel trapped there if you end up hating it. I just want them close." She hesitated, letting out a breath. "I honestly don't know. I have to see how it feels. My life has been so chaotic. Sometimes I fantasize about stability and community. At other moments, I fear the city's hustle might swallow us. But for now, I think yes. Let's at least try." An almost imperceptible smile tugged at Gregory's lips, relief shining in his eyes. "We'll approach it step by step. I can introduce you to a friend of mine. She's a real estate agent who's quite sensitive to family needs. We'll keep it small scale. I promise not to overshadow your decisions." The sincerity in his tone chipped away at the last walls of her resistance. She blinked, tears threatening yet again. "I appreciate that. And I'll do my part to make it work. I never imagined we'd be like this again, discussing a life together even if it's for the girls. It's surreal." Gregory's hand twitched, as if he might reach out to squeeze hers, but he stopped short. "I won't pretend I've forgiven everything," he admitted, voice laced with quiet candor. "There's hurt. But the moment I saw them, Claire, I realized how incomplete my life has been. I'm ready to focus on being their father. The rest—" He paused, swallowing. "Well, we can see what the future holds for us as two people co-parenting. Maybe we'll find some path to healing, maybe more. But it has to be honest." She nodded vigorously, tears on the brink of falling. "Honesty, yes. I promise I won't hide anything anymore." A heavy hush settled between them, charged with the possibility that, if they navigated these waters with care, they might emerge stronger than before, perhaps even forging an unexpected second chance. At that moment, a soft cry from the living area broke the silence. Claire turned to see Rose stirring awake, pushing the blanket aside. Lily was still fast asleep. One small hand flopped over the sofa's edge. Claire and Gregory rose, crossing the room. Rose blinked up at them, face puffy with sleep, and mumbled something about being thirsty. Claire smoothed her daughter's hair. "I'll get you some water," she said gently, moving off to fill a cup. Gregory crouched beside the couch. Rose stared at him, blinking a few times as though deciding whether to trust him in her post-nap grogginess. He offered a small smile and she inched closer, resting her head against his arm. The weight of her trust made his throat tighten. Claire returned with the water, helping Rose sip. Then, noticing Lily beginning to stir, she placed a hand on Lily's shoulder to comfort her. Gregory hovered protectively over them both, forming a trio of mother, father, and child that felt simultaneously precarious and deeply right. After a moment, Lily squirmed fully awake, sleepily glancing around. "Daddy?" she whispered, as if momentarily unsure if he'd still be there. "I'm here," Gregory said, brushing a hand lightly over her hair. She looked up at him and smiled, snuggling back into the couch with a little sigh of contentment. Claire and Gregory exchanged a quick, profound look, one that said more than words could. This was worth every conversation, every struggle. For now, at least, they had found a fragile equilibrium, two parents united in their devotion to these bright-eyed children. The pain of the past lingered, but it no longer felt insurmountable. The day edged onward, bringing them ever closer to the moment when they would board that plane, together, and land in a city brimming with both challenges and opportunities. Yet as the sun dipped outside, painting streaks of orange across the airport runways, they continued to bask in the gentle warmth of reawakened connection. Soon enough, the real trials would begin. Co-parenting under one roof, bridging 5 lost years, deciding whether old wounds could heal enough to allow something like love to reignite. But those concerns could wait a little longer. In this room, with children drifting between sleep and cuddly chatter and 2 ex-lovers forging a careful truce, a promise glowed, the promise of hope. Evening settled over the airport with a hush reminiscent of secrets waiting to be revealed. Lights along the runway blinked in steady rhythms, guiding incoming and outgoing planes like beacons in the dusk. The air held a mild chill, the sort that made you want to lean into warmth and familiar embraces. For Rose and Lily, however, excitement radiated above all else. They were about to fly on a real airplane for the first time. Back in the suite, the energy was palpable. Suitcases lay half-packed, clothes were folded into neat stacks as Claire double-checked they had everything the twins might need. Lily dashed around, brandishing her new toy airplane, making whooshing noises as she pretended to land it on the coffee table. Rose, more reserved, quietly helped Claire by bringing socks or hair ties from the bedroom, occasionally peeking at Gregory to see if he approved of her tidiness. Claire's nerves were a subtle undercurrent. She paused every so often, gazing at the twins in a fleeting moment of disbelief. Was she really about to uproot them, again, and board a private jet to New York? Once that would have seemed unfathomable. But looking at Gregory, who was meticulously securing passports and travel documents, she felt a cautious sense of peace. He was stepping into fatherhood wholeheartedly. Whatever came next, they would face it together. "Mommy, do we have pajamas for the plane?" Rose asked as she placed a small pillow into the carry-on bag. Claire nodded. "We do, sweetie. The flight might be late, so it's good to have comfy clothes. Once we take off, we'll see how sleepy you feel. Planes can be cozy if we settle in right." Gregory, kneeling nearby to confirm details on his phone, offered a gentle smile. "My pilot just texted. Weather is clear tonight, so we should be approved for departure around 9 o'clock. That gives us a couple of hours. We'll eat something before we board, all right?" Rose and Lily both nodded eagerly. Lily asked, "Is there food on the plane?" She spoke the word plane with a hushed reverence, as though it were a magical creature rather than just a vehicle. Gregory chuckled. "Yes, there'll be snacks and juice, but better to have a real meal before we fly. We don't want tummies rumbling the whole time." Claire finished zipping the last suitcase, exhaling shakily. She glanced around the suite that had briefly been their refuge from confusion. Despite all the emotional upheaval, she was grateful for the sense of security it had provided. Now came the truly surreal part, stepping onto Gregory's private jet for a flight to a city that might become their new home. "Girls," Claire said, ushering them to a chair. "Let me brush your hair before we leave." The twins scrambled over, taking turns as Claire carefully passed a brush through their silky locks, forming neat braids so they wouldn't tangle in flight. Lily fidgeted, wiggling excitedly whenever she caught Gregory's eye. Rose, though more composed, couldn't fully hide her grin. To them, the world seemed to have expanded overnight. Daddy was real, airplanes were friendly giants, and an adventure awaited just beyond the terminal gates. "Should I arrange a cart for the luggage?" Gregory asked Claire, straightening his tie. He'd changed into comfortable travel slacks, still impeccably pressed, but more relaxed than his typical power suits. A hint of nerves flickered in his otherwise collected demeanor. After all, it wasn't just any flight. It was their first flight as a family. "Yes, please," Claire answered, smoothing down the girl's braids. "I'm a bit paranoid about losing anything. The children's special toys, my laptop. I'd rather keep them close if possible." Gregory nodded. "I'll just do carry-ons for the essentials. Larger bags can be stowed." Then he looked at Claire with quiet earnestness. "We'll get through this, okay?" She mustered a grateful smile. "I know. Thank you." Soon they left the suite, luggage rolling behind them. The twins bounced on their toes as they rode the elevator down to the lobby. Once again, the hum of the airport greeted them, bright and bustling with travelers. In the midst of this swirl, the four of them formed a small unit. Two wide-eyed children, a mother watchful yet hopeful, and a father who had stepped unexpectedly into his long-denied role. They found a modest cafe near the private aviation terminals. Over plates of pasta and vegetables, they eased into conversation about the upcoming flight. Seatbelts, how the plane would feel during takeoff, why their ears might pop. The twins devoured every morsel of information, occasionally glancing at the runway through the cafe's windows. Claire admired Gregory's patience as he answered question after question, from "Do clouds taste like candy?" to "Will the plane do a loop-de-loop?" He explained gently that no, it wouldn't loop, but they might see stars if the sky was clear enough. After dinner, they made their way to the private lounge area, a quieter space reserved for chartered flights. Security checks were brief, courtesy of Gregory's status, and the staff smiled kindly at the curious children clinging to their mother's hands. Lily spotted the plane they would board through the lounge windows, a sleek white jet with Caldwell Innovations logo faintly visible on the tail fin. "Is that ours?" she whispered in awe, as though it were a mythical vessel. Gregory followed her gaze. "It is," he confirmed. Pride mingled with a pang of regret. He'd flown in that jet countless times, usually alone, never expecting it might one day carry his daughters. Claire approached, resting a comforting hand on Lily's shoulder. "You see the pilot over there near the steps? He's a friend of Daddy's. He's flown a lot." Rose peeked around her mother, giving a shy wave. The pilot, noticing them, returned the gesture with a friendly grin. At that moment, an airline attendant from Gregory's crew stepped over to greet them, introducing herself as Angela. She crouched to talk to the girls at eye level, telling them she'd have blankets and pillows ready, plus juice and coloring books to keep them occupied. The twins grinned, enthralled by the kindness and sense of importance that came with boarding a private plane. A short while later, they climbed the short stairway into the jet's cabin. The interior gleamed with subdued luxury, cream-colored leather seats, polished wood paneling, and soft lighting that lent a cozy ambiance. A faint smell of citrus polish lingered in the air. Rose and Lily gasped at the spaciousness, having imagined airplanes as cramped tubes of seats from pictures they'd seen. Here they had room to walk around, once the seatbelt sign was off, of course. "Whoa," Lily breathed, hugging her teddy. "This is like a house in the sky." Gregory's heart squeezed with a mix of pride and sorrow that he'd never seen their first reaction to something so extraordinary. At least he got to witness it now. He set the carry-ons near a corner seat and showed the twins where they could sit for takeoff, plush, reclining seats near windows that offered an unimpeded view of the outside world. Claire settled next to them, ensuring they were buckled securely. Gregory checked in with Angela, verifying that everything was on schedule. Then he took his own seat, diagonally across from Claire and the twins, so he could keep them in sight. The engines hummed to life, sending a slight vibration through the cabin floors. Lily gripped Claire's hand, eyes wide, while Rose's face lit with excitement. "Is it going up now?" Rose demanded, half nervous, half thrilled. Gregory leaned in from his seat, speaking calmly. "We'll taxi onto the runway first. Then you'll feel the plane speed up, like a race car, kind of, and then we'll lift into the sky." Lily gulped audibly. "But we won't fall, right?" Claire gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "No, sweetheart, we won't fall. The pilot is very skilled. Planes are made to fly." A moment later, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, welcoming them aboard and confirming flight time to Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, just across the river from Manhattan. Then the plane began to move, rolling forward onto the taxiway. Rose and Lily both pressed themselves against the window, enthralled by the winking lights of the runway. Claire watched them with a tender smile, remembering her own first flight as a teenager. How magical it had seemed. Gregory stayed silent, letting the children soak in the moment. Inside, he wrestled with a fresh wave of emotion. This was more than a trip. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that might redefine his empire and his personal life all at once. The jet pivoted, lining up with the runway. The engines roared, gradually intensifying. Lily's grip on Claire's hand tightened, but her eyes never left the window. Then they were airborne. The nose lifted, the runway lights blurred below, replaced by the twinkling tapestry of the airport receding into darkness. Rose let out a small shriek of delight, clapping her free hand. Lily remained wide-eyed, mouth parted in silent astonishment. Even Claire couldn't suppress a look of wonder. Something about leaving the ground always felt like a small miracle. Once the plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dimmed. Angela reappeared with headphones and a tray of light refreshments, juice boxes for the girls, sparkling water for the adults. She offered small pillows and blankets, tucking them around the twins. Lily tested the seat's recline button, giggling as it tilted back. Rose gazed out the window, mesmerized by the dotted lights below. Claire and Gregory exchanged a soft smile across the aisle. In that fleeting look, an entire unspoken conversation transpired. Gratitude that the girls were safe and happy, relief that the flight had begun smoothly, and a shared acknowledgement that their real challenges still lay ahead. But for this moment, floating through the sky, a sense of peace enveloped them. Half an hour passed in relaxed quiet. Rose and Lily sipped juice, flipping through the coloring books Angela had offered. Claire helped them choose crayons, occasionally chuckling at Lily's whimsical color choices: blue trees, pink grass. Gregory closed his laptop, having briefly glanced at business emails. Nothing pressing could outweigh the experience of witnessing the twins' first flight. Eventually, the hum of the engines and the gently dimmed lights lulled Lily's eyelids downward. She drifted off, snuggled under a fleecy blanket. Rose soon followed, her head lolling against Claire's arm. The peaceful sight of the sleeping twins melted away any lingering tension. Claire carefully shifted them so they'd be comfortable, then exhaled softly. She glanced at Gregory. In the muted overhead glow, she could see the lines of fatigue around his eyes. Yet a quiet smile tugged at his lips as he watched the girls. She mouthed the words, "Thank you," and he dipped his head in acknowledgement. Rising from her seat, Claire moved carefully toward Gregory's side, mindful not to wake the children. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "They're so calm. I can't believe they managed all this without a meltdown." Gregory smirked. "Kids surprise you. I'm so proud of them, and of you." He paused, gaze flicking to Rose and Lily's sleeping forms. "Claire, I know we're stepping into unknown territory, but I'm glad we're doing it together." Her throat tightened. She placed a hand on the seat back for balance, feeling the aircraft's subtle vibrations. "Me too," she managed. "Whatever happens next, at least we're being honest this time." "Agreed." He reached up to gently tap her hand with his fingertips, a feather-light gesture of solidarity. Then, as though remembering a boundary, he withdrew. "We'll land in just a couple of hours. I have a car waiting to take us into the city." Claire nodded, nerves fluttering in her stomach at the thought of entering a high-rise or fancy apartment building. She reminded herself that everything was about the children. If she had to conquer her discomfort about money or status to give them stability, she would do it. She settled back into her seat. Outside the window, stars shimmered in the night sky. Down below, city lights formed branching rivers of gold and white. In her lap, Lily shifted, unconsciously clinging to her mother's arm. Claire stroked the child's hair, finding unexpected solace in the quiet hum of the plane. In that hush, she realized how far they had come in a short span of time. The morning started with a swirl of questions, yet here they were, mid-flight, forging a path toward something new and precariously hopeful. Claire glanced at Gregory, who seemed to sense her gaze and offered a small, reassuring nod. She exhaled, letting the plane's steady course anchor her racing thoughts. Yes, tomorrow would bring fresh worries. Logistics, big city chaos, the challenge of forging a co-parenting routine. But tonight, as the jet glided through the sky, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future not defined by fear or regret, but by the love they both felt for the children now dozing under soft blankets. With that fragile trust, Claire leaned back and closed her eyes, letting the subdued lights and the lullaby of the engines cradle them onward. Meanwhile, the skyline of New York drew closer, beckoning them toward the next chapter of a story that once seemed irreparably broken, but was now, against all odds, being rewritten. Together. Touchdown came sooner than Claire expected. 1 minute, the cabin lights were low and tranquil, and the twins were sleeping soundly in their blankets. The next, the pilot's voice drifted through the intercom, announcing that they would soon begin their descent into Teterboro Airport. Claire blinked groggily, taking a moment to remember where she was, and more importantly, the reason she was here at all. Across the aisle, Gregory tucked away his laptop, then glanced up at Claire with quiet anticipation. Lily stirred first, rubbing her eyes. She looked around in confusion before memory clicked, and a sleepy grin slid across her face. Rose woke next, a deep yawn bunching her shoulders as she stretched under the blanket. "Are we here?" Lily mumbled, her voice still clouded by slumber. "Almost," Claire replied softly, brushing some stray hairs back from Lily's forehead. "We'll land in a few minutes." Gregory could see the twinge of worry crossing their daughters' faces. Children often didn't like abrupt changes. "Hey," he said gently, leaning toward them. "Once we're on the ground, we'll take a car to my apartment. You can see where I live, maybe get a snack and some real rest. Sound good?" Both girls nodded, still dazed. Claire stifled her own nerves at the mention of Gregory's apartment. She had imagined the place many times, picturing something sleek and modern, possibly overlooking the city. How would it feel to step inside with 2 small children in tow? He'd insisted it was large enough to accommodate all of them temporarily, but she couldn't quell a whisper of discomfort at intruding on his personal space. The plane banked gently, city lights sparkling in the darkness below. Through the windows, Claire glimpsed the majestic Manhattan skyline in the distance, a row of towering silhouettes outlined against the night sky. Lily nudged Rose, pointing out the clusters of glittering lights with an excited whisper, and then, with a soft thunk of wheels against tarmac, they were down. Angela, the flight attendant, helped them gather blankets and carry-ons. In a matter of minutes, they were disembarking, stepping onto the small stairway leading to the private terminal. The cool New Jersey air felt sharp after the cabin's controlled temperature. Claire inhaled deeply, eyes flicking to the girls to ensure they handled the unfamiliar rush of noise and lights. Lily clutched Claire's hand while Rose trotted carefully by Gregory's side. Inside the terminal, a driver waited by a sleek black SUV ready to take them into the city. Gregory confirmed some final arrangements with his pilot, then ushered everyone into the car. The twins stared wide-eyed at the tinted windows and the spacious back seat. Claire settled between her daughters, thankful for the quiet hum of a vehicle that was clearly nicer than anything she'd ever hired in her old life. Soon, they were off. Highway lights and billboards streaked past, and Lily pressed her face to the glass, trying to take in every flicker of illumination. Claire felt Gregory's gaze on her from the front passenger seat. When she glanced up, he offered a small, encouraging nod as if to say, "It's all right to be overwhelmed. We're in this together." They crossed the George Washington Bridge, its iconic steel cables illuminated in blue-white glow. Lily gasped audibly, and Rose pulled out her toy plane, as though she wanted to show it the new scenery. Claire answered the girls' questions in hushed tones, while Gregory occasionally interjected with trivia about the city's bridges and tunnels. Despite the hour, pushing close to midnight, Manhattan was ablaze with lights. Cars zipped along wide avenues, neon signs gleamed, and towering buildings rose like silent giants on every side. The driver navigated smoothly through traffic. Claire caught herself staring upward, disoriented by the skyscrapers that loomed against a starless sky. Once upon a time, she'd dreamed of living in a big city with Gregory, though back then, big city meant somewhere else. Now here she was, with 2 children pulling up to a polished high-rise that had an air of quiet luxury. Gregory's apartment building stood near Columbus Circle, where the dim glow of streetlights revealed the fringe of Central Park just across the way. The SUV paused at a discreet entrance, and the doorman, a courteous older man, quickly emerged to assist with baggage. Claire felt a spike of self-consciousness. She'd grown used to dingy apartments and budget motels. Now, a uniformed staff member was welcoming her as a guest in Gregory Caldwell's place. Gregory stepped out first, gently directing the driver where to place the luggage. Then he opened the door for the twins, who stumbled out in sleepy awe. Rose looked up at the tall glass doors reflecting the glow from inside. "It's so big," she whispered, sounding more reverent than afraid. He crouched beside them, a reassuring hand on each child's shoulder. "It's just a building, but it's home," he said softly. "Come on, I'll show you the lobby." Claire followed, heart thudding as she scooped up a yawning Lily. The building's doorman tipped his hat politely. Once inside, the lobby's marble floors and tasteful artwork almost made Claire shiver with intimidation. A single security guard gave Gregory a nod, apparently familiar with him. Gregory, still holding Rose's hand, led them to a private elevator, which opened after he swiped a small key card. Up they went, each passing floor ticked off in tiny lights above the elevator door. Lily let out a soft yawn against Claire's shoulder. Rose clung to Gregory's pant leg, her expression torn between excitement and exhaustion. Claire silently absorbed the sheen of sophistication, muted music, plush carpeting, and that faint hint of flowers that fancy buildings always seem to maintain. Finally, the elevator opened into a quietly lit foyer. Gregory stepped out, punching in a code on a sleek keypad by the door. It slid open onto a spacious living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Claire's breath caught. New York at midnight shone through that glass like a jewel-encrusted tapestry. The twins, now fully alert again, waddled in, gazing around at the high ceilings and polished wood floors. "Wow," Lily said, eyes wide. "Wow indeed," echoed Rose, though her voice was hushed in a kind of reverent awe. Claire's gaze swept over the stylish but understated furniture, a blend of comfort and modern design. A large sofa faced the windows, and along the side wall, built-in shelves held books and a few personal mementos. The place was immaculate, not in an unwelcoming way, but definitely pristine. Gregory cleared his throat. "Make yourselves at home." he said, forcing a casual tone. There are 2 guest bedrooms. They're not set up for kids, but they're comfortable. Tomorrow we can buy anything you need. Extra blankets, toys, clothes, whatever. Claire nodded, warmth creeping into her cheeks. Thank you. She tried not to gawk at the refined decor. Just a few days ago, she was trying to figure out how to pay next month's rent. Now, she stood in a living space that practically whispered money and success. She reminded herself to stay calm for the girls' sake. She turned to the twins, who were half limp with sleepiness. Let's get you into PJs, she suggested, setting Lily down gently on the couch. You can see more of the apartment tomorrow when you're rested. Gregory moved to help, guiding Rose by the hand. Claire dug pajamas from the carry-on while he showed them down a short hallway to a guest room with a queen bed and soft lamps. Rose gazed at the neat white comforter, then climbed up with hesitant curiosity. Lily followed, dragging her teddy. Claire busied herself in the adjoining bathroom, pulling out toothbrushes and child-safe toothpaste, letting the girls line up for a quick brush before bedtime. Throughout the routine, Gregory lingered on the edge, unsure whether to dive in or step aside. At one point, Lily held up her arms in a universal sign of "pick me up," and he instinctively obliged, hoisting her onto his hip. She looped small arms around his neck and yawned contentedly, as if already comfortable in her father's embrace. Claire saw the stunned joy in Gregory's eyes as he carried Lily back into the guest room, gently placing her beside Rose. Okay, Claire said softly, tucking blankets around them. We're in a new place, but it's safe. Right across the hall is Daddy's room. She glanced at Gregory, who offered a confirming nod. And I'll be just next door. If you wake up in the night, just call. We'll come right away. Rose let out a small, contented sigh, half closing her eyes. Lily whispered, Daddy, will you check on us too? Her voice carried that fragile innocence, as though needing final assurance. Gregory stroked her hair, heart full. Yes, I promise. I'll come check. Now get some sleep, you two. Within minutes, the twins succumbed to their exhaustion, warm under the blankets. Claire lingered, watching them breathe in quiet tandem, her heart swelling with gratitude that this transition had gone smoother than she dared hope. Finally, she and Gregory retreated into the hallway, leaving the door partially ajar so they could hear if the girls stirred. They stepped back into the living room. A hush settled between them, punctuated by the faint hum of traffic far below. From here, the city lights gleamed like scattered diamonds. Claire turned to Gregory, hugging herself. This is beautiful, she murmured, her voice echoing slightly in the open space. He managed a small smile, though his eyes held a touch of self-consciousness. I worked a lot to afford it, he said. But if I'm honest, it never really felt like home. Just a place to come back to after business trips. Maybe that changes now. Claire shifted uneasily, torn between admiration and an old resentment of their class differences. Resentment she'd tried to bury. It's lovely, she repeated, and the girls will be happy here. Thank you for opening your home like this. He slid his hands into his pockets. It's their home as long as you'll allow it. You too, Claire. Emotion tightened her throat. She managed a nod. I'll sleep in the other guest room tonight, she said quietly, uncertain about boundaries. But tomorrow we should talk more about everything. Agreed, Gregory answered. He hesitated, then gently touched her arm, the gesture warm but hesitant. Get some rest. We'll figure it out step by step. We've come a long way already. She offered him a half-smile, exhaustion creeping up her bones. Right. Good night, Gregory. Good night, Claire. He released her arm, letting her slip down the hall to the second guest room. Once alone, he glanced around at the apartment, feeling the absence of her presence immediately. For years, he'd lived in careful solitude, orchestrating every detail of his life. Now 2 small children were fast asleep under his roof, and the woman he'd never stopped loving, despite everything, was here too. Quietly, he switched off the living room lamp. Before heading to his own room, he paused at the doorway to the twins' space. They slept soundly, identical heads nestled on matching pillows, secure in the knowledge that both parents were near. Gregory's heart clenched with an unfamiliar sense of completeness. He stepped into his bedroom, slipping off his shoes. The city glowed beyond the wide windows, distant sirens and horns reminding him that New York never really slept. Tonight, though, he felt a calm unlike any he'd known. He vowed that when morning came, he would start forging a life that included Claire and the girls in every sense, a life that might finally fill that silent ache he'd carried for years. And so, with weary optimism, he lay down in the darkness, letting the soft hum of the city lull him. Somewhere in the next room, Claire and their daughters were settling into dreams, unaware of how the gears of fate were still turning. Tomorrow promised challenges, but tonight they had safely arrived. It was a beginning, or perhaps a second chance, born of pain, tempered by love, and carrying with it the quiet, persistent hope that a family, once broken, could be made whole again. Sunlight streamed across the high-rise windows, painting long, golden rectangles over the gleaming hardwood floors. Gregory woke earlier than usual, a vague sense of excitement fluttering in his chest. His gaze drifted toward the cityscape outside. Morning traffic rolled along the avenues below, and beyond that, the soft green canopy of Central Park stirred in a gentle breeze. The world was awake, but for the first time in years, Gregory felt more than just a passing obligation to join it. He actually felt anticipation. He rose, changed into casual slacks and a light sweater, then padded down the hallway. The door to the guest room where the girls slept was still ajar just as he'd left it. Pausing, he peered inside. Rose and Lily lay tangled in blankets, their small bodies angled in typical childlike chaos. Lily half sideways, Rose sprawled diagonally. The sight made him smile. He wondered what they dreamed about, maybe big planes, city lights, or adventures with stuffed animals. Next door, the second guest room housed Claire. The door was closed, giving no hint whether she was awake or still lost in slumber. A subtle wave of nerves passed through Gregory at the thought of greeting her in his home. But that was the new reality, wasn't it? He was no longer alone, no longer simply the wealthy bachelor CEO. He was a father, and possibly more if he and Claire could ever mend old wounds. A faint sigh behind him made him turn. Standing there in the hallway was Lily, wide-eyed, hair tousled from sleep. Her pajama top hung a little crooked, and she hugged her teddy bear as though it were a protective charm. "Morning, Daddy," she said, voice hushed as though testing the word in this new environment. Gregory's heart squeezed. He dropped into a crouch so he'd be at her eye level. "Good morning, Lily. Did you sleep okay?" She nodded. "It's so quiet up here, but I like it. Is Rose still sleeping?" He motioned toward the guest room. "She's there, snoring away," he teased gently. "We can let her rest a bit longer, or we can wake her if you like." Lily scrunched her nose thoughtfully. "Let her sleep. She always gets cranky if I wake her up too soon," she announced with the earnest authority of a twin who knew her sister's habits all too well. Gregory stifled a chuckle. "All right. Are you hungry? We can find something for breakfast." She brightened instantly. "Yes! Mommy says breakfast is the best meal." Her eyes darted around, taking in the unfamiliar corridor. "Where's the kitchen?" He led her down the hallway to the open-concept living space. Floor-to-ceiling windows gleamed, revealing the city awash in morning light. Lily paused near the glass, mesmerized by the moving cars and bustling pedestrians below. "Wow," she murmured. "They look like little ants." Gregory remembered being a child himself, gazing down from tall buildings with that same awe. "Yeah," he agreed softly. "It's kind of fun to watch." Stepping over to the kitchen island, he rummaged in the cabinets. He rarely cooked more than the occasional quick meal, Most of his at-home dining had come from takeout. Still, there was coffee, cereal, milk, and some basics. Lily's gaze scanned the neat rows of dishes, the gleaming countertops. "It's so clean," she observed, wrinkling her nose. "Where's your messy cupboard for snacks?" Gregory swallowed a laugh. "I guess I don't have many snacks at the moment. We can fix that. Maybe we'll go grocery shopping today, okay?" She nodded with absolute seriousness, as though grocery shopping was a grand adventure. "Okay," she echoed, perching on a tall stool by the kitchen island. Gregory placed a bowl of cereal in front of her, plus a small glass of orange juice. The simplest of meals, yet Lily's eyes lit up. She began to eat with gusto. Just then, soft footsteps approached. Claire emerged from the hallway, looking a bit shy in yesterday's jeans and a simple navy t-shirt. Her hair was loosely pulled back. Even in the morning light, sleep still in her expression, she radiated a gentle warmth that made Gregory's chest tighten. "Morning," she greeted quietly, glancing from Lily's content form to Gregory. "You two are up early." "We're hungry," Lily declared, mouth half full with cereal. "Daddy said we can buy snacks later." Claire smiled, stepping toward them. The swirl of half-awkwardness remained, but also a sense of shared purpose. She brushed a hand over Lily's hair. "Good plan. We can get fruit, yogurt, all sorts of breakfast items." Gregory ducked behind the kitchen counter to prepare coffee. "I'll make you some coffee," he offered to Claire, remembering her old habit of 2 cups a day from college days. He'd teased her then, calling her a coffee addict. She'd teased him back, calling him a workaholic. He remembered that give and take with a bittersweet pang. "Thank you," she said, leaning against the island. Lily munched happily, the only sound in the otherwise hushed apartment. Claire glanced toward the hallway. "Is Rose still asleep?" "Out like a light," Gregory replied, pouring hot water into the coffee machine's reservoir. He pressed a switch and the machine began to drip aromatic brew. "We can give her a few more minutes, or Lily can do the honors of waking her if she wants," he added, winking at Lily. Lily considered that with the same serious air she'd used before. Not yet, she decided, taking another spoonful of cereal. She might get cranky. Claire and Gregory shared an amused look, the kind that parents exchange when their child unknowingly reveals a quirk of daily life. For a moment, it was easy to forget the 5-year chasm that had separated them. The fleeting sense of family enveloped them, like a fragile bubble of warmth. Claire helped Lily set her bowl in the sink once she finished. "Do you want more?" she asked her daughter, who shook her head. "I want to see the rest of the house," Lily declared, sliding off the stool. Before Gregory or Claire could respond, she scampered toward the living room, teddy in hand, enthralled by the wide windows and the uncharted corners of Gregory's apartment. Claire's eyes flicked to Gregory, a nervous question evident in her gaze. He nodded reassuringly. "It's safe. The balcony doors are locked, and I don't keep anything dangerous out in the open." Then he added more softly, "She's welcome to explore. Both of them are. This is their home now, too, even if just for a while." Claire exhaled, half smiling as she poured herself a mug of coffee. "Thanks for that. It's really generous." He watched her, noticing the way she fidgeted, a sign of unease. "You okay?" he asked gently, leaning on the counter. "I know it's a big change." She met his gaze, cheeks coloring a bit. "I'm fine, just getting used to it. This place is so nice, I feel like I might break something if I breathe too hard." She let out a self-conscious laugh. "We'll adapt, and I know the girls will love it here once they settle in." Gregory's mouth quirked in empathy. "We'll get used to it together. If there's anything you need, furniture or kid-proofing the place, I'll handle it." She gave a small nod, sipping coffee. The moment stretched, a tension of unspoken feelings simmering beneath the surface. Claire cleared her throat, changing the subject. "What about you? Work, your schedule? You're used to being alone. Now you've got 3 extra bodies around." "I've already let my team know I'll be light on meetings for a few days, At least while we settle you and the girls, Gregory replied. A flicker of guilt passed his features. He was used to living on a meticulously planned itinerary. But I want to be present for them, for you, as much as possible. My CFO can handle the day-to-day for now. Claire mulled that over. I appreciate it. We'll have to figure out a routine. Preschool might not be an immediate option if the girls stay here. I can keep them home or find a short-term program. They were so close to finishing the year back in our old place. She trailed off, realizing how complicated it was to uproot them mid-semester. Gregory was about to respond when the sound of small footsteps pattered from the hallway, accompanied by a groggy voice. Rose had emerged, evidently woken on her own. She stood, blinking at them in mild confusion. Lily popped up from behind the couch with a squeal of triumph. "You're awake!" Lily rushed to her twin's side, proclaiming the existence of cereal and a big window that shows the whole city. Gregory poured another bowl of cereal, this time for Rose, who rubbed her eyes and climbed onto a stool. "Morning," she mumbled. "Where's Mommy?" "Right here," Claire said, sliding over to give her a hug. "How are you feeling, baby?" Rose shrugged. "Good, I guess," she said around a yawn. Then she peered at Gregory. "Is this your kitchen, Daddy?" The directness jolted him again, yet he smiled. "Yes," he said, placing the cereal bowl in front of her. "But it's yours now, too. Help yourself, okay?" Rose's lips curved into a small smile. She took a spoonful, eyes still adjusting to the bright morning. Meanwhile, Lily bounded around, apparently re-energized, pointing out each feature of the living room. The big TV mounted on the wall, the plush rug, the shelf of books. "Where are your toys?" she demanded, as if the concept of a grown-up living space with minimal clutter was baffling. Gregory stifled a smile. I don't have many toys," he admitted. "But we can change that. Would you two like to go shopping today?" He shot Claire a questioning glance. Was it too soon? But she nodded, quietly relieved he was taking the initiative to help the twins acclimate. Lily burst into excited chatter about stuffed animals, while Rose added that she wanted coloring books and maybe some puzzles, too. "We can do all of that," Claire confirmed, setting down her coffee mug. "We should also pick up clothes if we're staying in the city for a while. I only packed a few outfits for the girls, not expecting, well, this turn of events." Gregory's tone was resolute. "We'll handle it. I'll arrange for a car to drive us around. Let's get everything you need." Claire realized how quickly her life had pivoted from pinching pennies to hearing Gregory speak casually of arranging cars and getting everything. Yet seeing the twins so animated, no longer anxious, eased her misgivings. This was their father, offering them stability. She'd spent 5 years wishing she could provide them more, even as she dreaded the day Gregory discovered the truth. Now that day had arrived, and it was turning out better than she dared hope. "Okay," she whispered, half to herself, half to him. "Let's do it, one step at a time." He caught her eye, the warmth in his gaze echoing that same sentiment. They had a long road ahead, navigating co-parenting, reconciling old hurts, but for this morning, the plan was simple: breakfast, laughter, and a trip to find a few more creature comforts for Rose and Lily. It felt almost normal, maybe even a little bit like the family life they'd once imagined, back when everything was just a hopeful dream. Claire pushed away the swirl of memories, focusing on the here and now. Lily scampered back to the window, enthralled once more with the city unfolding outside. Rose finished her cereal, then hopped off the stool asking if they could go see the park. Gregory glanced at the clock, considering. "We could do that after shopping," he suggested, smiling at Claire. "Weather's beautiful. Let's make it a day of exploring." Claire's heart lifted, buoyed by the sparkle in Rose's eyes. "Yes," she agreed quietly. "Let's go see the park after we shop." She looked at Gregory, and for a moment they shared a glance heavy with a fragile sort of promise. The city beyond the windows beckoned, humming with possibilities. And in that warm apartment above the Manhattan streets, 4 lives converged in cautious hope. They were bound by an unspoken resolution to build something worthy of the 2 little girls who were seeing the world and their father for the first time. And in so doing, perhaps they might find a path to healing old scars, forging a new beginning that neither had dared believe was possible. Gregory made a quick call to arrange a driver, and within the hour, the 4 of them were stepping out of the high-rise into a warm, late spring morning. The sun shone brightly, and although the city pulsed with its usual commotion, something in the air felt fresh, a sense of possibility that each of them felt, if in different ways. For Rose and Lily, this was the first true glimpse of New York City at ground level. As they exited the lobby, both girls clung to Claire's hands, eyes darting around in awe. Taxis honked, passers-by flowed along the sidewalks, and towering buildings cast deep shadows across the street. The girls exchanged excited glances. This was a world so big, so different from the quiet coastal town they'd left behind. "Look at all the cars!" Lily exclaimed, peering at the line of yellow taxis. She bounced on her toes. "Mommy, do you see how fast they go?" Claire nodded, smiling. She was keenly aware that they needed to watch the twins carefully in such a busy environment. "I see, sweetie. But hold my hand tight, okay? City streets can be crowded." Rose pointed across the street to a hot dog cart. "That man is selling food," she observed, curiosity mixing with the lingering shyness she tended to show in unfamiliar places. Gregory gently steered them toward a waiting SUV. "We can try one later if you want," he offered with a smile. "They call them street hot dogs. But first, let's get some shopping out of the way." Lily and Rose exchanged gleeful looks as though this was already shaping up to be the best day ever. New toys, hot dogs, city sights. They clambered into the vehicle, Claire helping them with seat belts. Gregory slid into the passenger seat, nodding at the driver. The ride to the department store took only a few minutes. Every block seemed to bring new marvels, towering statues, window displays, more people than the twins had likely seen in a month back home. Claire noticed how their eyes sparkled. She felt a pang of guilt that she hadn't been able to give them such experiences before. But Gregory's presence, calmly explaining landmarks and pointing out interesting sights, soothed that regret. Perhaps it was time to embrace this new chapter instead of mourning past opportunities. They arrived at a large multi-story store known for its comprehensive children's section. Claire felt a moment of hesitation as they passed through the glass doors. This place exuded affluence and style, not exactly the thrift shops she'd frequented. But the twins squealed with delight at the colorful displays, and Gregory gently squeezed Claire's shoulder in reassurance, guiding them inside. The morning passed in a blur of selections: t-shirts, jeans, dresses for warmer weather, a couple of sneakers in the right sizes. The store associates were polite, offering help and measuring Lily's and Rose's feet. Lily insisted on shoes with bright sparkles, and Rose was drawn to a pastel sweater with little embroidered flowers. Claire hovered near the price tags, fretting silently. Each item was more than she'd usually pay for an entire outfit. Yet Gregory remained unflustered, easing each purchase along as if it were the most natural thing in the world. At one point, Lily pointed at a display of ruffled skirts. She ran her hands over them with an almost reverent awe. "So pretty, Mommy." Claire understood that Lily had never worn anything quite so fancy. She glanced at Gregory, uncertain if they should indulge in something that felt purely frivolous, but he only smiled and nodded. "They can each pick something special," he said quietly to Claire. "If that's okay with you." A rush of tenderness washed through her. "Of course," she whispered. "Thank you." Each twin emerged from the children's dressing area beaming, Lily in a sparkly purple skirt, Rose in a soft pink sundress with pockets. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. They looked so happy, so confident. When Lily did a little twirl, Gregory applauded with genuine enthusiasm. She ran to him, giggling, and he lifted her into a hug. "Look at you," he murmured, tone full of wonder. "All dressed up. You two are making this store look better than ever." Rose shyly nestled against Claire's side, sneaking peeks at the frilly outfit. Claire stroked her hair, marveling at how something as simple as a new dress could elicit such pure joy. She couldn't deny that Gregory's willingness to indulge them, without conditions, without exasperation, warmed a long, frozen corner of her heart. They finished with clothes and moved to the toy section. Here, the children's eyes widened to near comical proportions. Plush animals, art supplies, puzzles and games beckoned from every aisle. Lily zigzagged from shelf to shelf, squealing about stuffed cats or rainbow-colored building blocks. Rose was more methodical, carefully comparing puzzle designs. Claire and Gregory trailed behind them, exchanging small smiles. "Are we overdoing it?" Claire asked softly, watching Lily try to hug 3 plush toys at once. Gregory considered. "Maybe a little," he admitted, smiling. "But it's their first day in the city. I want them to feel welcome, not worried about every penny. We can set limits soon, I promise. For today," he trailed off, a hint of regret sneaking into his voice. "I've missed so much of their lives. I just want to see them smile." The sadness in his tone tugged at Claire. She recalled the nights she'd rocked the twins to sleep, wishing Gregory were there. They could never rewind the clock, but perhaps small gestures now could help bridge the gap. "Then let's let them choose a few favorites," she said, placing a hand briefly on his arm. "We'll take it slow after that." They left the store an hour later, arms full of shopping bags. The driver helped them load everything into the SUV's trunk. The twins flopped onto the back seat, munching on small snacks the store had gifted them, tiny pretzels and juice. Claire gazed out at the busy street, contemplating how much her life had changed in mere days. The idea of returning to their old coastal apartment now felt surreal, yet the question still gnawed. Was all this just a fleeting reprieve, or could it become a stable reality? The thought must have shown on her face because Gregory glanced over from the front passenger seat. "Everything okay?" he asked gently as the driver pulled away. She managed a weak smile. "Yes, just digesting. It's a lot to process. But the girls are happy, so I can't complain." He nodded in quiet understanding. "We'll take it at your pace," he promised. "And theirs. If you get overwhelmed, let me know." She exhaled, appreciation warming her chest. "Thank you." They reached Central Park next, leaving the SUV to amble along the park's winding paths on foot. The midday sun glinted off skyscrapers that rimmed the park's edges, but within the lush greenery, the city's cacophony dulled. Children ran after pigeons, couples rowed small boats on the lake, and buskers strummed guitars at benches along the walkways. Rose and Lily took it all in with wide eyes. Lily spotted a bubble-blowing street performer near a statue. She pulled Claire's hand, begging to go closer. Gregory trailed them, occasionally meeting Claire's gaze as if to say, "This is amazing, isn't it?" She couldn't argue. The twins scampered after the drifting soap bubbles, squealing whenever one popped near their noses. They wandered deeper into the park, pausing by a small playground. Rose and Lily dashed to the swings and Claire gave them gentle pushes. Gregory stood a bit to the side, arms folded, a blend of protectiveness and mild uncertainty. He leaned in when Lily insisted he give her a higher push. Claire watched him, smiling at his tentative but eager attempts at fatherhood, catching Lily at the right moment, leaning down to tie Rose's shoelace, offering them a sip from a water bottle he'd brought along. Claire remembered the few times in college they'd daydreamed about maybe one day taking their future children on picnics or traveling the world as a family. She'd let herself imagine that life, not knowing their relationship would be shattered before such dreams could root. Yet, here they were, after all. Perhaps the road was twisted, but they'd arrived at a version of that dream, at least for now. They ate lunch from a nearby cart, hot dogs as promised, plus pretzels and lemonade. Rose dripped mustard on her new dress, giggling in apology. Lily tried to chase a squirrel, squealing when it darted up a tree. Claire helped them clean sticky fingers with wet wipes, still a bit dazed by the swirl of new memories they were creating. Gregory smirked at the mustard stain on Rose's dress, gently dabbing it with a napkin. After lunch, they strolled slowly back toward the park's exit. Lily grew tired, rubbing her eyes. Claire hoisted her for a bit, but Gregory soon offered to carry her, and Lily all but melted into his shoulder. Rose, yawning as well, held Claire's hand more tightly now, her earlier vigor settling into content exhaustion. Back in the SUV, Claire realized the girls were dozing off, heads lolling. Gregory caught her eye in the rearview mirror, a gentle smile curling his lips. She felt a pang of gratitude as he mouthed, "They had fun," without making a sound. She nodded, resting a hand on Rose's knee. Indeed, they had. A day that felt normal, joyful, not overshadowed by old wounds or new uncertainties. They reached the apartment, where the doorman welcomed them back. Lily stirred enough to stagger inside the lobby with Gregory's help, while Claire guided Rose, who was half asleep. They rode the elevator up, and Rose mumbled something about wanting to snuggle her new plush bunny. Claire assured her it was in one of the shopping bags, safely waiting in the apartment. Inside the doorway, Gregory set Lily on her feet, fishing the plush toys from their bags. The twins were too drained to fully enjoy them now, though Lily did clutch her new stuffed cat before trudging off to the guest room. Claire walked Rose to the same bedroom, helping her change out of the mustard-stained dress and into comfy clothes. Once both girls were settled for a late afternoon nap, Claire stepped back into the living area. Gregory stood by the windows, gazing out at the city. He turned when he heard her, shoulders relaxing. "They're asleep?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, I think the excitement wore them out." He offered a soft chuckle, motioning to the couch. "Come sit. We can finally talk, maybe plan out the next few days, or just breathe." Grateful for the reprieve, Claire sank onto the couch, the cushions plush beneath her. Gregory took a seat a respectful distance away, leaning his elbows on his knees. Through the window, Manhattan sprawled in a sunlit panorama. Traffic hummed below like a distant current, carrying on the city's perpetual dance. Claire glanced down at her folded hands. "I'm glad they enjoyed today, but I still feel like I'm spinning. Are we staying here indefinitely, until we figure out something more permanent?" He studied her face, the concern etched there. "Only as long as you're comfortable. I can help you find a short-term rental if you'd prefer your own place. You could also stay here for a while and see how it works. There's plenty of room." Her mind teemed with uncertainties. "The girls need stability. I don't want to bounce around, but I also don't want to invade your space." She met his gaze, a flush coloring her cheeks. "I mean, it's one thing to have us as guests for a few nights, but longer?" Gregory inhaled. He'd spent so many years alone that the sudden presence of a family under his roof was disorienting, yes, but also fulfilling. "Claire, you're not invading," he said quietly. "This is their home as much as it's mine. And you belong here too if you want to." Her chest constricted with emotion. She recalled the nights she'd lain awake, pregnant and terrified, wishing for his arms around her. Now, to be offered a place by his side, an open invitation, felt overwhelming, yet comforting. "I just need time," she managed, "to adjust, to make sense of all this." He nodded in understanding. "Take all the time you need. We can even set up a schedule. Days the girls spend here, nights you might want to have just you three alone somewhere else, though I admit I'd prefer to see them daily." He paused, a rawness entering his voice. "I'm not exactly an expert father, but I'm learning. Today was incredible." Claire felt a rush of empathy. "You're doing great," she murmured. "They adore you already." His gaze dropped, a faint tremor in his exhale. I love them," he said so quietly it was almost swallowed by the hush of the apartment. "I knew the moment they called me Daddy in that lounge. And every time I see them, well, it's like a piece of me I never realized was missing has slotted into place." Tears burned behind her eyes. She recalled how much guilt she'd harbored, denying him these moments. Gently she reached across the small gap between them, brushing her fingertips over his hand. "I'm sorry for taking that from you," she whispered. "If I could change it." He turned his hand to clasp hers, the contact warm. "I know," he interrupted softly, his tone void of accusation. "Let's not let regret overshadow what we have now. The girls need us to look forward, not back." She swallowed, nodding. "Yes, you're right." They lapsed into a contemplative silence, hands still loosely linked. Outside, sunbeams lengthened, casting golden stripes on the floor, as if marking the passage of a day that had carried them deeper into shared territory. For a moment, they simply breathed, united by a commitment to two small hearts sleeping in the next room, and perhaps to each other in ways they had only begun to explore. Eventually, Claire withdrew her hand, meeting his eyes with a small tentative smile. "Thank you," she repeated, her voice gentle. "For the clothes, the toys, and for today. It gave me hope." Gregory returned her smile. "Hope," he echoed quietly, as though tasting the word. "I think I feel it too." And so, as the sun settled behind the spires of Manhattan, they rose to check on their daughters. Laughter and worry and trust had intermingled throughout the day, forging a tentative bridge where once a chasm yawned. Tomorrow would bring new tests, more questions, deeper introspection. But for now, they found solace in the gentle rhythm of each other's presence, walking side by side into the corridor where two little girls lay napping, unaware that their joy had begun to heal wounds older than their short lives. Early evening draped the city in hues of dusky purple, headlights dancing across avenues, neon signs flickering to life. In Gregory's apartment, a gentle, expectant atmosphere settled. After a day spent exploring new wonders, from department store aisles to the serene corners of Central Park, Rose and Lily had awoken from their nap bright-eyed and full of tales to recount. They buzzed around the living room, re-examining their new clothes and stuffed toys as though rediscovering hidden treasures. Claire joined them on the couch, flipping through picture books they had just acquired. Lily crawled into her lap, occasionally exclaiming, "Look, Mommy, this one has stickers!" while Rose nestled close to her sister, surveying every colorful page with rapt attention. Across the room, Gregory was clearing away the remains of a delivered dinner. Pizza boxes and salad containers that had been hastily consumed amid the girls' excited chatter. As he tidied up, he watched the small cluster of mother and daughters with a faint, contented smile. "Daddy?" Lily called, twisting around to face him. "Are we watching a movie tonight?" She had discovered his large TV and streaming apps, and the idea of picking something just for fun enthralled her. Gregory tossed the last pizza box into the trash and moved closer. "If you want," he said, making sure to catch Claire's eye in a silent question. "Is that okay?" She nodded, and he continued, "Any particular movie in mind?" Lily and Rose exchanged glances. "A princess one," Lily exclaimed, while Rose added, "Or maybe something with animals." "How about both?" Claire chimed in, offering a sly grin. "I think we can find a story about a princess who talks to animals." The twins clapped, squealing in delight. Gregory chuckled and grabbed the remote. "All right," he said, navigating the menu. "A princess who talks to animals, coming right up." He paused, voice softening. "But we won't stay up too late, okay? We've got another busy day tomorrow." The girls agreed, eyes shining with the joyful thrill of new traditions. As Gregory flipped through the streaming options, Claire briefly left the couch to fetch pillows and blankets from the linen closet. She arranged them on the living room floor, creating a makeshift nest for the twins. Lily hopped over with her stuffed cat, settling in with a grin, while Rose snuggled next to her, Bunny clasped tight. Claire lowered herself beside them, and Gregory joined a moment later, taking a spot on the floor so they all formed a cozy ring around the TV. Soft music drifted from the opening scene, images of an animated castle, chirping birds, and a determined princess searching for her destiny. Lily gasped whenever the princess sang. Rose, wide-eyed, whispered predictions about the plot in Claire's ear. Meanwhile, Gregory found himself captivated less by the movie and more by the sight of this impromptu family movie night. The hush of the apartment, the girls' enraptured giggles, Claire leaning in to help Lily follow the story. This was a glimpse into a life he'd once believed out of reach. As the movie progressed, Lily nodded off first, lulled by the princess's lullaby. Rose followed not long after, her bunny slipping from her grasp. Claire gingerly lifted Lily to reposition her, while Gregory scooped Rose into his arms, mindful of her slumbering weight. They turned to each other with a quiet smile. "Bedtime," Claire whispered, turning off the TV. They rose, each cradling a daughter. The hallway lights cast soft shadows as they carried the sleeping twins to the guest room. Once there, they laid the girls under the covers, two warm, peaceful forms curled up in new pajamas. Claire tucked Lily's stuffed cat beside her, while Gregory nestled the bunny into Rose's arms. He paused before stepping away, lightly brushing a hand across Rose's forehead. Claire caught the wistful sadness in his eyes. That lost time between birth and now was a sorrow neither of them could fully erase. But at least in this moment they were together, doing what parents do, comforting their children, ensuring sweet dreams. Claire gestured for Gregory to follow her back into the living room so as not to wake the girls with any whispered conversation. He nodded, padding softly across the hall. In the living area, they dimmed the lights to a warm glow. The remnants of the movie's final frame still hovered on the screen, a stylized castle flickering before the credits. Gregory clicked the TV off. For a moment, they stood there, taking in the hush. New York's nightscape twinkled beyond the windows, millions of lights shining, each representing a life, a story. The reflection of those urban constellations danced across the hardwood floor, as if granting the scene a gentle enchantment. Claire exhaled slowly, feeling the full weight of the day. "You okay?" Gregory asked, voice low. She turned to him, arms folding in a self-hug. "Yes. It's just, everything is different now. I'm happy the girls love it here, but I'm also scared. So much has changed so fast." He nodded, coming a half-step closer. "I understand," he murmured. "I feel it too. I mean, I've run multi-million-dollar deals without blinking, but the idea of being responsible for two tiny humans and doing it right makes me question everything." He offered a hesitant smile. "I'm grateful you're here to guide them." She felt warmth at his acknowledgement. "They're lucky to have you," she said softly. "They'll come to rely on you as their father. It'll take time and consistency, but you've already shown you're up to the task." Silence settled again, electric with unresolved tension. Claire thought of their past, the arguments, the pain, the unspoken love that had always lingered behind it all. Now they stood, unexpectedly reunited, forging a daily life for their daughters. Would it remain purely co-parenting? Or was there space in their hearts to rekindle something deeper? Her voice trembled with honesty when she finally spoke. "Gregory, I know we're focused on the girls, and that's right. But where does that leave us, you and me?" Her cheeks warmed at her own directness, but the question burned inside her. He looked at her, expression solemn. "I've been wondering the same. I never stopped." He cut himself off, inhaling shakily. "I never stopped caring about you. That's the truth. But I also carry anger, regrets for how it all happened. I'm trying to forgive, to understand." His voice faltered, showing a vulnerability that contrasted with his typical composure. Claire's heart pounded. She recalled how he used to hold her hand during college walks, how they'd whispered about a future that felt so close and then vanished. "I'm sorry," she repeated, tears threatening. "I'll never forgive myself for not involving you from the start, but I was terrified and foolish. I just hope someday you can see past that. Maybe see me again, not just the mistakes." He hesitated, then gently took her hand. His palm felt warm, steady. "I do see you, Claire," he said, voice hushed. "Not just the mistakes, but the woman who fought to protect our children, even if she made flawed choices, and the woman I once loved, maybe still love, if we can rebuild trust. But I don't want to force anything. I just want us to be honest, to see if something real can grow from here." Emotions swelled in her chest, relief, longing, fear. She clasped his hand more firmly, her breath unsteady. "Honesty," she echoed, eyes glistening. "I can do that. I want to try, Gregory. For them, for us. We deserve to see if the love we had can live again in a new way." A fragile smile curved his lips. He drew her closer, free hand tentatively brushing her cheek. She leaned into the touch, tears slipping free at the gentleness she'd craved for so long. When he leaned in, pressing his forehead softly against hers, neither spoke. The closeness said enough. For a long minute, they stood like that, two hearts grappling with old wounds and new possibilities. Outside, the traffic murmured. The city glimmered. Behind the doors of the guest room, Rose and Lily slept, unaware of the quiet turning point unfolding. Eventually, Gregory stepped back, brushing a tear from Claire's cheek with his thumb. "You must be exhausted," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Let's get some rest. We can take this one day at a time." Claire nodded, eyes damp yet bright. "One day at a time." She turned, heading for the hallway. At its threshold, she paused to look back. He stood there, tall in the city's glow, an open vulnerability across his face. She knew the road ahead would be neither simple nor guaranteed. They would have to navigate the demands of parenthood, the complexities of their personal histories, the potential backlash of melding their once separate worlds. But in that moment, she believed in a hopeful path. They weren't the same naive college students who once dreamed of building an empire together, nor the frightened, angry pair who had parted without closure. They were two people forever linked by love, both for each other and for the twin daughters dozing in the next room. "Good night," she whispered, a small smile trembling on her lips. He returned the smile, a world of understanding in his gaze. "Good night, Claire." She disappeared down the hall, leaving him to switch off the living room lights. Darkness settled, but it felt peaceful. A quiet confidence filled him, like the hush after a long-awaited resolution. The next few days, weeks, months, there would be challenges. But for now, the Caldwell apartment was no longer a space of lonely success. It thrummed with laughter, the patter of small feet, the promise of a future built around the family they were rediscovering. Stepping into his own room, Gregory closed the door softly, mind already drifting to the morning to come. How Lily and Rose would bounce out of bed, how Claire might greet him with that cautious, hopeful smile, how the city outside their windows would shine just a bit brighter for the love they were choosing to nurture. And as he lay his head on the pillow, letting the city's distant hum lull him, he thought of the word Claire used. Hope. Yes, that was the right name for this path. They had found it in the airport lounge and carried it through every step since. Now, it glowed quietly in the night, guiding them onward, together. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen